Well, hello, hello, hello. How's everybody tonight?
I'm
Good, good.
really feeling good.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you,
Me, amazing.
yeah. It's so quiet in here. You guys are like on library rules or something. like,
I'm like anticipating on reading out loud, so I just want to hurry up and read my part and be done because I
oh,
hate
yeah, you're gonna
reading
have to
out
wait.
loud.
Yeah, I get it. You're nervous, and we're all nervous. I'm nervous too. I never do this like live. This is like different. So I thank everyone. We've got a full crowd here in the chat.
Yeah.
Thank you everybody for joining us, and some of you were even here early.
Yeah, the
But
last time we did the reading, you and Rekkr were doing my recording to where I was able to rehearse and reread.
yes, when we did Twisted Fairy Tales, which
Yes.
was so much fun. I really do want to
Yeah.
find another one like that. That was so much fun where we all had our parts and yes, yes. And Rekkr with his audio magic, skills there, making us all sound really good. But yeah, but this one's gonna be live. So like, I don't know. Anybody have anything to say before we just like dive right into it? Any
I
questions in the
said,
chat?
Well,
no,
I
don't
would,
answer any of their questions. Just dive in it. Make
Yeah,
them surprised.
yeah.
and I
Huh,
do just want to say what I said in the chat. Excuse my French because I'm going to butcher the crap out of the French words. Yay!
Oh,
Yeah.
me too. Me
Yeah.
too. I was like saying it when I was reading
Yeah.
out loud to myself. I was like, oh my God.
Oh, that's right. So, well, I hope everybody had a good All Hallows Eve and a Halloween. And now it's the day after, and we're going to give you a twisted tale. So, on that, I guess I'll start. And we'll see if my audio engineer like lets us keep going. If it gets really bad, I'm sure he's going to cut us. Okay, but here we go. All right,
I got the button.
you got the button. Okay, so
Hmm.
everybody, I didn't see any questions in the chat, so Uh, here we go. All right. Thank you, everybody. Here we go. This is The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. I remember how, that night, I lay awake in the wagon lit in a tender, delicious ecstasy of excitement, my burning cheek pressed against the impeccable linen of the pillow, and the pounding of my heart mimicking that of the great pistons ceaselessly thrusting the train that bore me through the night. Away from Paris, away from girlhood, away from the white enclosed quietude of my mother's apartment, into the unguessable country of marriage. And I remember I tenderly imagined how, at this very moment, my mother would be moving slowly about the narrow bedroom I had left behind forever, folding up and putting away all my little relics, the tumbled garments I would not need any more, the scores for which there had been no room in my trunk, the concert programs I'd abandoned. She would linger over this torn ribbon and that faded photograph with all the half joyous, half sorrowful emotions of a woman on her daughter's wedding day. And in the midst of my bridal triumph, I felt a pang of loss, as if when he put that gold band on my finger, I had, in some way, ceased to be her child in becoming his wife. Are you sure, she had said, when they delivered the gigantic box that held my wedding dress that he bought me, wrapped up in tissue paper and red ribbon like a Christmas gift of crystallized fruit? Are you sure you love him? There was a dress for her, too, black silk, with the dull prismatic sheen of an oil on water, finer than anything she'd worn since that adventurous girlhood in Indochina, daughter of a rich tea planter, my eagle-featured, indomitable mother. What other student at the conservatoire could boast that her mother had outfaced a junk full of Chinese pirates, nursed a village through a visitation of the plague, and shot a man-eating tiger with her own hand, and all before she was as old as I? Are you sure you love him? I'm sure I want to marry him, I said, and would say no more. She sighed, as if it was the reluctance that she might at last banish the spectre of poverty from its habitual place at our meagre table. For my mother herself had gladly, scandalously, defiantly beggared herself for love. In one fine day, her gallant soldier never returned from the war, leaving his wife and child a legacy of tears that never quite dried, a cigar, a cigar box full of medals, and the antique silver revolver that my mother, grown magnificently eccentric in her hardship, kept always in her reticule, in case, how I teased her, she was surprised by footpads on her way home from the grocer's shop. Now and then a starburst of lights spattered the draw blinds, as if the railway company had lit up all the stations through which we passed in celebration of the bride. My satin nightdress had just been shaken from its wrappings. It had slipped over my young girl's pointed breasts and shoulders, supple as a garment of a heavy water, and now teasingly caressed me, egregious, insinuating, nudging between my thighs as I shifted restlessly in my narrow berth. His kiss, his kiss, with tongue and teeth in it, in a rasp of beard, had hinted to me, though with the same exquisite tact as this night-dress he'd given me, of the wedding night, which would be voluptuously deferred until we lay in this great ancestral bed in the sea-girt, pinnacled domain that lay, still beyond the grasp of my imagination, that magic place, the fairy castle whose walls were made of foam, that legendary habitation in which he had been born, to which one day I might bear an heir, our destiny, my destiny. Above the syncopated roar of the train, I could hear his even, steady breathing. Only the communicating door kept me from my husband, and it stood open. If I rose up on my elbow, I could see the dark leonine shape of his head, and my nostrils caught a whiff of the opulent male scent of leather and spices that always accompanied him, and sometimes during his courtship had been the only hint he gave me that he came into my mother's sitting room. For though he was a big man, he moved as softly as if all his shoes had soles of velvet, as if his football rather turned the carpet into snow. He had loved to surprise me in my abstracted solitude at the piano. He would tell them not to announce him, then soundlessly open the door and softly creep up behind me with his bouquet of hothouse flowers or his box of Maron's glass, lay his offering upon the keys, and clasp his hands over my eyes as I was lost in a Debussy prelude. But that perfume of spiced leather always betrayed him. After my first shock, that is, I was forced always to mimic surprise so that he would not be disappointed. He was older than I. He was much older than I. There were streaks of pure silver in his dark mane, but his strange, heavy, almost waxen face was not lined by experience. Rather, experience seemed to have washed it perfectly smooth, like a stone on a beach whose fissures had been eroded by successive tides. And sometimes that face, in stillness when he listened to me playing, with the heavy eyelids folded over, that always disturbed me by their absolute absence of light, seemed to me like a mask, as if his real face, the face that truly reflected all the life he had led in the world before he met me, before even I was born, as though that face lay underneath this mask, or else elsewhere, as though he had laid by the face in which he had lived for so long in order to offer my youth, a face unsigned by the years. And elsewhere I might see him playing, elsewhere, but where? In perhaps that castle to which the train now took us, that marvelous castle in which he had been born. Even when he asked me to marry him, I said yes. Still he had not lost that heavy, fleshy composure of his. I know it must seem a curious analogy, a man with a flower, but sometimes he seemed to me like a lily, Yeah, a lily, possessed of that strange, ominous calm of a sentient vegetable, like one of those cobra-headed funeral lilies whose white sheaths are curled out of a flesh as thick and tensely yielding to the touch as vellum. When I said that I would marry him, not one muscle in his face stirred, but he let out a long, extinguished sigh. I thought, oh, how he must want me. And if it was as though the imponderable weight of his desire was a force I might not withstand, not by virtue of its violence, but because of its very gravity. He had the ring ready in a leather box lined with crimson velvet, a fire opal the size of a pigeon's egg, set in a complicated circle of dark antique gold. My old nurse, who still lived with my mother and me, squinted at the ring. Opals are bad luck, she said, but this opal had been his own mother's ring, and his grandmother's, and her mother's before that, given to an ancestor by Catherine de' Medici. Every bride that came to the castle wore it, time out of mind. And did he give it to his other wives and have it back from them? Asked the old woman rudely. Yes, she was a snob. She hid her incredulous joy at my marital coup, her little marquise, behind a facade of false binding. But here she touched me. I shrugged and turned my back pettishly toward her. I did not want to remember how he had loved other women before me, but the knowledge often teased me in the threadbare self-confidence of the small hours. I was 17 and knew nothing of the world. My Marquise had been married before, more than once, and I remained a little bemused that, after those others, he should have shown and chosen me. Indeed, was he not still in mourning for his last wife? "'Tis, 'tis," went my old nurse. And even my mother had been reluctant to see a girl whisked off by a man who so recently was bereaved. A Romanian countess, a lady of high fashion, dead just 3 short months before I met him. A boating accident at his home in Brittany. They never found her body, but I rummaged through the back copies of the society magazines my old nanny kept in a trunk under her bed and tracked down her photograph. The sharp muzzle of a pretty, witty, naughty monkey, such potent and bizarre charm, of a dark, bright, wild, yet worldly thing, whose natural habitat must have been some luxurious interior decorator's jungle, filled with potted palms and tame, squawking parakeets. Before that, her face is calm and property. Everyone painted her, but the reddened engraving I liked best, the evening star walking on the rim of night. To see her skeletal, enigmatic grace, would never think she had been a barmaid in a cafe in Montmartre until Provis de Chavannes saw her and had her expose her flat breasts and elongated thighs to his brush. And yet it was the absinthe doomed her, or so they said. The first of all his ladies, the sumptuous diva, I heard her sing Isolde, precociously musical child that I was, taken to the opera for a birthday treat. My first opera. I had heard her sing Isolde. With what white hot passion had she burned from the stage, so that you could tell she would die young. We sat high up, halfway to the heavens in the gods, yet she half blinded me, and my father, still alive, oh so long ago, took hold of my sticky little hand to comfort me in the last act, yet all I heard was the glory of her voice. Married 3 times within my own brief lifetime to 3 different graces now, as if to demonstrate the eclecticism of his taste. He had invited me to join this gallery of beautiful women. I, the poor widow's child, with the mouse colored hair that still bore the kinks of the plates from which it had so recently been freed, my bony hips, my nervous pianist fingers. He was rich as Croesus. The night before our wedding, a simple affair, at the Mari, because his countess was so recently gone, he took my mother and me, curious coincidence, to see Tristan. And do you know, my heart swelled and ached so during the leap stall that I thought I must truly love him. Yes, I did. On his arm, all eyes were upon me. The whispering crowd in the foyer parted like the Red Sea to let us through, and my skin crisped at his touch. How my circumstances have changed since the first time I heard those voluptuous chords that carry such a charge of death passionate in them. Now we sat in a loge, in red velvet armchairs, and a braided, bewigged flunky brought us a silver bucket of iced champagne in the interval. The froth spilled over the rim of my glass and drenched my hand. Ah, my cup runneth over. And I had on a Perrault dress. It had prevailed upon my reluctant mother to lend him by my trousseau. What would I have gone to him in otherwise? Twice darned underwear, faded gingham, serge skirts, hand-me-downs. So for the opera, I wore a sinuous shift of white muslin tied with a silk string under the breast, and everyone stared at me and at his wedding gift. His wedding gift clasped around my throat, a choker of rubies, 2 inches wide, like an extraordinarily precious slit throat. After the terror in the early days of the Directory, the aristos who'd escaped the guillotine had an ironic fad of tying a red ribbon around their necks at just the point where the blade would have sliced it through, a red ribbon like the memory of a wound. And his grandmother, taken with the notion, had her ribbon made up in rubies, such a gesture of luxurious defiance. That night at the opera, back to me, even now, the white dress, the frail child within it, and the flashing crimson jewels round her throat, bright as arterial blood. I saw him watching me in the gilded mirrors with the accession eye of a connoisseur inspecting horseflesh, or even a housewife in the market inspecting cuts on the slab. I'd never seen, or else had never acknowledged, that regard of his before. The sheer carnal avarice of it, and it was strangely magnified by the monocle lodged in his left eye. When I saw him look at me with lust, I dropped my eyes, but in glancing away from him, I caught sight of myself in the mirror, and I saw myself suddenly as he saw me, my pale face, the way the muscles in my neck stuck out like thin wire. I saw how much that cruel necklace became me, and for the first time in my innocent and confined life, I sensed in myself a potentiality for corruption that took my breath away. The next day, we were married. The train slowed, shuddered to a halt. Lights, clank of metal, a voice declaring the name of an unknown, never to be visited station, silence of the night, the rhythm of his breathing, that I should sleep with now for the rest of my life. And I could not sleep. I stealthily sat up, raised the blind a little, and huddled against the cold window and misted over with the warmth of my breathing, gazing out at the dark platforms towards those rectangles of domestic lamplit that promised warmth, company, a supper of sausages hissing in a pan on the stove for the station master, his children tucked up in the bed asleep, in the brick house with the painted shutters, all the paraphernalia of the everyday world from which I, with my stunning marriage, had exiled myself. Into marriage, into exile. I sensed it, I knew it, that henceforth I would always be lonely. Yet that was part of the already familiar weight of the fire opal that glimmered like a gypsy's magic ball, so that I could not take my eyes off it when I played the piano. This ring, the bloody bandage of rubies, the wardrobe of clothes from Peraltan wool, his scent of Russian leather, all had conspired to seduce me so utterly that I could not say I felt one single twinge of regret for the world of tartines and mammon that now receded from me, as if drawn away on a string, like a child's toy, as the train began to throb again, as if in delighted anticipation of the distance it would take me. The first gray steamers of the dawn now flew in the sky, and an eldritch half-light peeped into the railway carriage. I heard no change in his breathing, but my heightened, excited senses told me he was awake and gazing at me. A huge man, an enormous man, and his eyes, dark and motionless as those eyes the ancient Egyptians painted upon their sacrifice, fixed upon me. I felt a certain tension in the pit of my stomach. To be so watched, in such silence, a match struck. He was igniting a Romeo and Juliet fat as a baby's arm. Soon, he said in his resonant voice that was like the tolling of a bell, and I felt all at once a sharp premonition of dread that lasted only as a moment, as long as the match flared, and I could see his white, broad face as if hovering disembodied above the sheets, illuminated from below like a grotesque carnival hit. Then the flame died. The cigar glowed and filled the compartment with a remembered fragrance that made me think of my father. Now he would hug me in the warm huge of Havana when I was a little girl, before he kissed me and left me and died. As soon as my husband handed me down from the high step of the train, I smelled the amniotic salinity of the ocean. It was November. The trees, stunted by the Atlantic gales, were bare, and the lonely halt was deserted but for his leather-gartered chauffeur waiting meekly beside the sleek black motor car. It was cold. I drew my furs around me, a wrap of white and black, broad stripes of ermine and sable, with a collar from which my head rose like the calyx of a wild flower. I swear to you, I had never been vain until I met him. The bell clanged. The straining train leapt its leash and left us at that lonely wayside halt where only he and I had descended. Oh, the wonder of it! How all that might of iron and steam had paused only to suit his convenience, the richest man in France. Madam, the chauffeur eyed me. Was he comparing me individuously to the countess, the artist model, the opera singer? I hid behind my furs as if they were a system of soft shields. My husband liked me to wear my opal over my kid glove, a showy theatrical trick, but the moment the ironic chauffeur glimpsed its simmering flash, he smiled, as though it was proof positive I was his master's wife, and he drove towards the widening dawn that now streaked half the sky with a wintry bouquet of pink roses, orange of tiger lilies, as if my husband had ordered me a sky from a florist. The day broke around me like a cool dream. Sea, sand, a sky that melts into the sea, a landscape of misty pastels with a look about it of being continuously on the point of melting, a landscape with all the deliquescent harmonies of Debussy, of the etudes I played for him, the reverie I'd been playing that afternoon in the salon, of the princess where I'd first met him, among the teacups and the little cakes, I, the orphan, hired out of charity to give them their digestive of music. And his castle, The fairy solitude of the place, with its turrets of misty blue, its courtyard, its spiked gate, his castle that lay on the very bosom of the sea, with seabirds mewing about its attics, the casements opening to the green and purple, evanescent departures of the ocean, cut off by the tide from land for half a day. That castle, at home neither on the land nor on the water, a mysterious amphibious place, contravening the materiality of both earth and the waves, with the melancholy of a mermaiden who perches on her rock and waits endlessly for a lover who had drowned far away long ago, that lovely sad sea siren of a place. The tide was low at this hour, so early in the morning. The causeway rose up out of the sea. As the car turned on the wet cobbles between the slow margins of the water, he reached out for my hand that had his sultry witchy ring on it, pressed my fingers, kissed my palm with extraordinary tenderness. His face was as still as I've ever seen it, still as a pond iced thickly over. Yet his lips, that always looked so strangely red and naked between the black fringes of his beard, now curved a little. He smiled. He welcomed his bride home. No room, no corridor that did not rustle with the sound of the sea, and all the ceilings, the walls on which his ancestors, in their stern regalia of rank, lined up their dark eyes and white faces, were stippled with refracted light from the waves, which were always in motion. That luminous, murmurous castle of which I was the chatelaine, I, the little music student, whose mother had sold all her jewelry, even her wedding ring, to pay the fees at the conservatoire.
Claire, sorry to interrupt you, but I actually have to drop off. Something came up. I'm
Okay,
sorry. I'll
okay,
try to come back.
okay, okay.
Sorry.
First of all, there was the small ordeal of my initial interview with the housekeeper, who kept this extraordinary machine, this anchored, castellated ocean liner, in smooth running order, no matter who stood on the bridge. How tenuous, I thought, might be my authority here. She had a bland, pale, impassive, dislikable face beneath the impeccable starched white linen headdress of her region. Her greeting, correct but lifeless, chilled me, daydreaming. I dared presume too much on my status. Briefly wondered how I might install my old nurse, so much loved, however costly and competent, in her place. Ill-considered schemings. He told me this once had been his foster mother, was bound to his family in the utmost feudal complicity. As much part of this house as I am, my dear. Now her thin lips offered me a proud little smile. She would be my ally as long as I was his, and with that I must be content. But here it would be easy to be content. In the turret suite he had given me for my very own, I could gaze out over the tumultuous Atlantic and imagine myself the queen of the sea. There was a Bechstein for me in the music room, and on the wall another wedding present, an early Flemish primitive of Saint Cecilia at her celestial organ. In the prim charge of this saint, with her plump, sallow cheeks and crinkled brown hair, I saw myself, as I could have wished to be. I warmed to a loving sensitivity I had not hitherto suspected in him. Then he led me up a delicate spiral staircase to my bedroom, before she discreetly vanished. The housekeeper set him chuckling with some, I dare say, lewd blessing for newlyweds in her native Breton, that I did not understand, that he, smiling, refused to interpret. And here lay the grand hereditary matrimonial bed, itself the size almost of my little room at home, where the gargoyles carved on its surfaces of ebony, vermilion lacquer, gold leaf with its white gauze curtains billowing in the sea breeze. our bed, and surrounded by so many mirrors. Mirrors on all the walls, in stately frames of contorted gold that reflected more white lilies than I'd ever seen in my life before. He'd filled the room with them to greet the bride, the young bride, the young bride who had become the multitude of girls I saw in the mirrors, identical in their chic navy blue tailored maids. Or traveling, madam, or walking, a maid had dealt with the furs. Henceforth, a maid would deal with everything. Eek. Okay. That's a lot.
Time for a little tad of a break and
Yes,
get your
because
juices
with
flowing.
yes, I'm not sure what to do now that Cass's part that she had to drop out. So that did take longer than I thought. Let's just check with the. How are you guys doing in the chat?
Let's see.
They are thinking that the guy is a vampire. You think he is? It does sound a little like an old vampire movie, doesn't it?
Vampirish.
Yes.
Mhm.
Oh, and the rubies around the neck. Yeah,
Neck,
that's
yeah.
yeah. No, nothing odd there at all, right, Liam? No. No, I'm it's okay, Mrs. Cassandra.
That's
Please
it.
don't worry. You know, in real life first, I get it.
Things happen. Yeah, no.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh, Fishnet's drunk and happy. So there we go. If he's
It
drunk
is.
and happy, everyone will be. Yeah.
I'll tell you, I don't know. Drunk and happy, and Shell's doing good.
Good.
Oh, okay. All right. All right. Well. Oh, okay. You talk for a bit there, Rekkr. I need to catch my breath for part two.
So what's everyone's plans for the week? Mip?
My plans for the week. Oh, God. What I usually do, sit on my ass and eat lollies.
Oh, that sounds really nice.
Well, no, it's actually not because I sit there just looking around thinking, gee, I should be doing that. I'll wait until later. And then I look around, oh, I should be doing that. Nah, I'll wait until later. And then I've got to actually have a day where I actually do things.
And
which
later
really
comes and you're like,
sucks.
oh.
Oh, crap. Yeah, exactly.
I know the feeling.
But, you know, these
yeah,
things
exactly.
happen.
It does. Let's see. What's everyone saying in the chat? Fish Nerd, what are you drinking? Is it gasoline?
Oh my! Oh,
Propane?
oh! I do see while I was reading that Shill gifted another 5 memberships to the channel to Charlie, Cinnamon, Sandra Stevens, Godless Granny, and Mini 560. Welcome everyone, and
Nice.
thank you, Shill. You're always so generous.
Yes.
Mm.
Brandy. Oh, brandy. That sounds
Oh,
good.
brandy is very warming.
Mmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
I like peach brandy, regular brandy.
Oh, and Fishnet said about the story, if he pleasures himself in front of a mirror, you'd never see it coming.
No, you would see a lot of it coming.
He would see it coming.
I would say that there would anyone in the room would see a lot of it coming. Like, come on, like seriously.
And lots of it, yes.
But yeah, it's a very old-fashioned, dramatic kind of telling of a tale, isn't it? Like Angela Carter. In the link that I dropped, and I'll drop it again for anybody new that's coming in. Is I don't know if we're gonna be able to finish. If that took me 20 minutes, like, what do you guys think? Are we gonna be able to do this whole thing? I don't know.
Well, good thing I'm not reading it because it would be like another hour.
Mm. Yeah.
What page do I start? What pages
What?
do I
Oh,
start?
you're on 13. Yeah, you start on page 13 to 20. Eh, We're up to seven
Do you
and a
want,
half right now. I can finish. I can do Cass's part easy. It's a little risque, you guys. So like, buckle up, buttercups. Like, and get your water and your
I
fan, because
I
people are
can
gonna
give
get.
it a go if you want.
Oh, you want to read the risque pages? Do you?
I don't know. Would everyone want to put up with my terrible reading out loud skills?
okay, put up a poll. 1 for yes, 2 for no, 3 for oh my god, are you crazy?
Okay, hold on. Let me say, like, wait. And what is the question? All right. Do you want Rekkr to read? Do you want NC Rekkr to read? And it's
Out
yes,
loud.
no, and it's oh. Well, I've heard him read out loud. It's not so bad. He reads for REU
Yeah,
all the
no,
time.
that's what they're saying in the chat. Read out loud. 1 and
What?
3 because I love it. You know, like they're saying
What?
yes, read, and because you're crazy. So
Okay.
yeah,
And then what was the third option? Was because you're crazy? It's yes, no, and then what?
You're crazy.
you're crazy.
Yeah, but they can't pick two, so that's gonna be like.
Liam, where's the number? Where's that phone number, Liam?
All right, there's the poll. Okay. All right, the poll is up. Liam, you know you have to list the phone number if you're putting 69. There's a channel rule along with caps. We only have very few channel rules around here. That's just teasing. It's teasing. No, it's channel wide if you do that. It's not show wide, Liam. Mm.
Well, looks like someone's reading.
Okay, looks
I
like
haven't looked.
okay.
Oh, Craven's decided that I feel like Claire's being a little bit crazy is irrelevant to the question.
Exactly. I'm out here showing my ass on YouTube like every other day. Of course I'm crazy. Like that's a given. Like that's just like you have to be
I
out
think your
here.
phone's ringing, Claire.
Oh gosh, is it? You know what? Is it?
You can't hear it. Everyone else can.
It's because I have headphones on. That's why, and they're really good sound canceling ones. See? Yes.
For everybody, for you, not for everyone else.
Sorry, it's stopped now, right? 'Cause I turned it off.
Yeah.
I forgot to silence my phone before the stream. That just shows you how nervous I was about this one. So, all right. So, Rek, I'll make you a deal. We're on
Okay.
page. We're on page. We're on page. I think it's 7. It says, "See," he said, gesturing towards those elegant girls. Right. I have acquired a whole harem for myself. That's your first sentence.
Oh, coming and swinging.
Do you have the link? Wait. Do you have it up? Do you have the link?
I don't have the link. You're gonna have to send me the link.
Oh, okay. Hold on.
I can't believe you. I had to open my mouth, didn't I?
You did, and now I'm not going to make you read all of the pages. Just give me a break
was
by
just
reading
gonna
the first couple, like 2 or 3. That's it. Like I'm not
Okay.
I'm not gonna torture you. I kind of like you. I'm not gonna torture you.
I don't
was
want to
gonna
torture
say-
everyone either.
Yeah,
I say, I can do a page or two in there if you need an extra, you know.
Here we go. Oh yeah, Crave. Of course, Crave puts another hashtag. Do you have it up, Claire? 2024. Shut up.
So what page am I?
Go. I believe it says 6, and you go down up 2 paragraphs, and you'll see where it says the word "see." He said, gesturing towards the elegant girls. Do you see?
So it says page 6.
Well, no. If you open it up as a PDF,
6 or 7.
it's 6 or 7, depending on how you slide. But it's
Ah, I found it.
Okay. So you go there, and then I'll stop you I'll cough when you can stop, and then I'll take
Okay.
over for you. Okay. We'll see. We'll see.
Or just
All right.
yeah, just tell me to stop.
Do you listen though? I mean, really? No.
I mean, I can do my best.
Okay. All right. We'll take
Okay.
it this. I just recommend everybody get some water, get a fan, get comfortable. Like this one, this. You sure? I mean, I'm not gonna force you to do this, but
In for a penny, in for a pound. Tell me when everyone's. Are we all ready?
Yep, I'm ready. Are you ready, Mipet? Are you ready,
Okay,
chat?
let's go.
Yep. I mean, 75%. Oh, it's either I'm crazy or you're reading. Like, those are really valid choices.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll start.
Okay, let's go.
See, he said, gesturing towards those elegant girls, I've acquired a whole harem for myself. I found that I was trembling. My breath came thickly. I could not meet his eyes and turned my head away. Out of pride, out of shyness, and watched a dozen husbands approach me in a dozen mirrors, and slowly, methodically, teasingly, unfastened the buttons of my jacket and slipped it from my shoulders. Enough. No more. Off comes the skirt, and next the blouse of apricot linen that cost more than the dress I had for First Communion. The play of the waves outside and the cold sun glittered on his monocle. His movements seemed to me deliberately coarse, vulgar. The blood rushed to my face again, and stayed there. And yet, you see, I guessed it might be so that we should have a formal disrobing of the bride, a ritual from the brothel. Sheltered as my life had been, how could I have failed, even in the world of prim Bohemia in which I lived, to have heard hints of his world? He stripped me, gourmand that he was, as if he was stripping the leaves off an artichoke. But do not imagine much finesse about it. This artichoke was no particular treat for the dinner, nor was he yet in any greedy haste. He approached his familiar treat with a weary appetite, and when nothing but my scarlet palpitating core remained, I saw in the mirror the living image of an etching by ropes from the collection he had shown me when our engagement permitted us to be alone together. The child with her stick-like limbs, naked but for her button boots, her gloves shielding her face with her hand, as though her face were the last repository of her modesty, and the old monocled lecher who examined her limb by limb, he in his London tailoring, she bare as a lamb chop, most pornographic of all confrontations. And so my purchaser unwrapped his bargain, and at the opera, when I had first seen my flesh in his eyes, I was aghast to feel myself stirring. At once, huh?
Are you okay?
I'm getting there. At once he closed my legs like a book, and I saw again the rare movement of his lips that meant he smiled. Not yet. Later. Anticipation is the greater part of pleasure, my little love. And I began to shudder like a racehorse before a race, yet also with a kind of fear, for I felt both strange, impersonal arousal at the thought of love and at the same time a repugnance I could not stifle for his white, heavy flesh that had too much in common with the armfuls of aurum lilies that filled my bedroom in great glass jars. Those undertake those those undertakers what?
Yeah. Like
Those
more.
undertakers lilies with heavy pollen that powdered your fingers as if you had dipped them in turmeric. The lilies I always associated with him that are white and stain you. This scene from
Okay.
um,
Hold
this
up.
scene from a voluptuary life was now abruptly terminated. It turns out he had business to attend to. His estate, his companies, even on your honeymoon, even then, said the red lips that kissed me before he left me alone with my bewildered sense, a wet, silken brush from his beard, a hint of tip, a hint of the pointed tip of the tongue. Disgruntled, I wrapped the negligee
Mm-hmm.
of antique. I am butchering these words spectacularly. Everyone okay?
You're doing okay. Go ahead.
I wrapped a negligee of antique lace around me to slip the little breakfast of hot chocolate the maid brought me. To sip the little chocolate the maid brought me. Okay. After that, since it was second nature to me, there was nowhere to go but the music room, and soon I settled down at my piano. Yet only a series of subtle discords flowed from beneath my fingers out of tune, only a little out of tune, but I'd been blessed with perfect pitch and could not bear to play any more. Sea breezes are bad for the pianos. We shall need a resident piano tuner on the premise if I am to continue with my studies. I flung down the lid in a little fury of disappointment. What should I do now? How shall I pass the long sea-lit hours until my husband beds me?
Okay, stop. I'm going to give you a break and do a couple of pages. You can do
Okay.
what after that. Okay. All right. You got all right. Everybody cool in the chat? Okay. We're good. You, I can tell you need some water. Yeah. Yeah. I
Yeah, I'll
shivered.
just grab some water.
Yeah. I shivered to think of that. His library seemed the source of a habitual odor of Russian leather. Row upon row of calf-bound violin, brown and olive, with gilt lettering on their spines, the octavo in brilliant scarlet morocco, a deep-bottomed leather sofa to recline on, a lectern carved like a spread eagle that held open upon it an edition of Hosmian's Labas from some over-exquisite private press. It had been bound like a missal in brass with gems of colored glass. The rugs on the floor, deep, pulsing blues of heaven and red of the heart's deepest blood or dearest blood, came from the Isfahan and Bokhara. The dark paneling gleamed. There was the lulling music of the sea and a fire of apple logs. The flames flickered along the spines inside a glass-fronted case that held books still crisp and new. Eliphas Levi, the name meant nothing to me. I squinted. A title or two: The Initiation, The Key of Mysteries, The Secret of Pandora's Box, and yawned. Nothing here to detain the 17-year-old girl waiting for her first embrace. I should have liked, best of all, a novel in yellow paper. I wanted to curl up on the rug before the blazing fire, losing myself in a cheap novel, munch sticky liquor chocolates. If I rang for them, a maid would bring me chocolates. Nevertheless, I opened the doors of that bookcase idly to browse, and I think I knew by some tingling of the fingertips, even before I opened that slim volume with no title at all on the spine, what I should find inside. When he showed me the roughs, newly bought, dearly prized, had he not hinted that he was a connoisseur of such things? Yet I had not bargained for this. The girl with tears hanging on her cheeks like stuffed pearls, her privates split a fig below the great globes of her buttocks, on which the knotted tails of the cat were about to descend, while a man in a black mask fingered with his free hand his prick, and curved upwards like the scimitar he held. The picture had a caption: Reproof of Reproof of Curiosity. My mother, with all the precision of her eccentricity, had told me what it was that lovers did. I was innocent but not naive. The Adventures of Eulalie at the Harem of the Grand Turk had been printed, according to the flyleaf, in Amsterdam in 1748, a rare collector's piece. Had some ancestral brought it back himself from the northern city, or had my husband bought it for himself from one of those dusty little bookshops on the left bank, where an old man peers at you through spectacles an inch thick, daring you to inspect his wares? I turned the pages in the anticipation of fear. The print was rusty. Here was another steel engraving, immolation of the wives of the Sultan. I knew enough for what I saw in that book to make me gasp. There was a pungent intensification of odor of leather that suffused this library. His shadow fell across the massacre. My little nun has found the prayer books, has she? He demanded, with a curious mixture of mockery and relish. Then, seeing my painful, furious bewilderment, he laughed at me aloud, snatched the book from my hands, and put it down on the sofa. Have the nasty pictures scared, baby? Baby mustn't play with grown-ups' toys until she's learned how to handle them, must she? Ooh. Then he kissed me, and with this time no reticences. He kissed me and laid his hands imperatively upon my breast, beneath the sheath of ancient lace. I stumbled on the winding stair that led to the bedroom, to the carved gilded bed on which he had been conceived. I stammered foolishly, We've not taken luncheon yet. And besides, it's broad daylight. All the better to see you. He made me put on my choker, the family heirloom of one woman who had escaped the blade. With trembling fingers, I fastened the thing around my neck. It was cold as ice and chilled me. He twined my hair into a rope and lifted it off my shoulder so that he could better kiss the downy furrows below my ears that made me shudder. And he kissed those blazing rubies, too. He kissed them before he kissed my mouth. Wrapped, he intoned. Of her apparel she retains only her sonorous jewelry. A dozen husbands impaled a dozen brides, while the mewing gulls swung on invisible trapeze in the empty air outside. I was brought to my senses by the insistent shrilling of the telephone. He lay beside me, felled like an oak, breathing stentoriously, as if he had been fighting with me. In the course of that one-sided struggle, I had seen his deathly composure shatter like a porcelain vase flung against a wall. I had heard him shriek and blaspheme at the orgasm. I had bled, and perhaps I had seen his face without its mask, and perhaps I had not. Yet I had been infinitely disheveled by the loss of my virginity. I gathered myself together. reached into the cloison coupon beside the bed that concealed the telephone and addressed the mouthpiece. His agent in New York. Urgent. I shook him awake and rolled over on my side, cradling my spent body in my arms. His voice buzzed like a hive of distant bees. My husband. My husband, who, with so much love, filled my bedroom with lilies until it looked like an embalming parlor. Those somnolent lilies that waved their heavy heads, disturbing their lush, insolent incense reminiscent of pampered flesh. When he'd finished with the agent, he turned to me and stroked the ruby necklace that bit into my neck, but with such tenderness now that I ceased flinching, and he caressed my breast. My dear one, my little love, my child, did it hurt you? He's so sorry for it, such impetuousness. He could not help himself. You see, he loves her so. And this lover's recitative of his brought my tears in a flood, and I clung to him, as though only the one who had inflicted the pain could comfort me for suffering it. For a while he murmured to me in a voice I'd never heard before, a voice like the soft consolations of the sea. But then he unwound the tendrils of my hair from the buttons of his smoking jacket, kissed my neck, my cheek briskly, and told me the agent from New York had called with such urgent business that he must leave as soon as the tide was low enough. Leave the castle, leave France, and would be away for at least 6 weeks. But it is our honeymoon. A deal, an enterprise of hazard and chance involving several millions lay in the balance, he said. He drew away from me into what waxwork stillness of his. I was only a little girl. I did not understand, and he had unspoken to my wounded vanity. I have had too many honeymoons to find them in the least pressing commitments. I know quite well that this child I bought with a handful of colored stones and the pelts of dead beasts won't run away. But after he called his Paris agent to book a passage for the States next day, just one tiny call, my little one, we should have time for dinner together. And I had to be content with that. A Mexican dish of pizzette with hazelnuts and chocolate salad, white, voluptuous cheese, a sorbet of muscat grapes and asti spumante, a celebration of Krug exploded festively, and then acrid black coffee in precious little cups, so fine it shadowed the birds with which they were painted. I had Cointreau, he had cognac in the library, and the purple velvet curtains drawn against the night, where he took me to the perch on his knee in a leather armchair beside the smoldering log fire. He had made me change into that chaste little Perrault shift of white muslin. He seemed especially fond of it. My breasts showed through the flimsy stuff, he said, like little soft white doves that sleep, each one with a pink eye open. But he could not let me take off my ruby choker, although it was growing very uncomfortable, nor fasten up my descending hair, the sign of a virginity so recently ruptured that still remained a wounded present between us. He twined his fingers in my hair until I winced. I said, I remember very little. The maid will have changed our sheets already, he said. We do not hang the bloody sheets out of the window to prove to the whole of Brittany you are a virgin, not in these civilized times. But I should tell you, it would have been the first time in all my married lives I could have shown my interested tenant such a flag. Then I realized with a shock of surprise how it must have been my innocence that captivated him. The silent music, he said, of my unknowingness, like La Terraza de Audiences all de Clerlou, played upon a piano with keys of ether. You must remember how ill at ease I was in that luxurious place, how unease had been my constant companion during the whole length of my courtship by this grave satyr who gently martyrized my hair. To know that my naivety gave him some pleasure made me take heart, courage. I shall act the fine lady to the manner, born one day, if only by virtue of default. Then
Time
slowly.
for another break. No?
Yeah.
I'm just going to say, you sound
Yeah.
like you're drying out a bit there, Claire.
Just a little bit.
We'll just,
Yep.
you have a drink and I'll do a couple of pages, eh? We'll see how I go anyway.
Oh, I was going to let Rekkr do a couple if he felt like it. If he and this it was now that yeah.
I
Well,
don't
let's
know when they're
just
going to be coming.
okay. So let's just take a couple minute break and talk because your section's next, Mipet, and I don't want you to strain. You know what I mean? So.
Yep.
Mm.
Okay. So what are we saying in the chat?
I'm
Claire's
trying to
sexy
look here.
voice. There you
Pedophile
go.
vampire.
Yeah. He does
I got
seem to like the
excited.
hentai, right? Like I was thinking, those old etchings, they often they did in those times often depict very young children in very like compromising positions. Like, mm, well, that was it was their version of porn. They didn't have the internet, you know.
Mm.
Eh, that's why the chamber is bloody
Mm,
and
definitely.
mousy.
Okay, Craven says this guy is definitely a pedo vampire. I don't know. I don't know. I guess you'll soon find out. Like, no. But Mousy's right. That's why it is. One of
Mm.
yes.
And I just timed her out for all caps, you naughty girl.
Oh no! Oh geez, you didn't time her out. Just get rid of her. All right, just get
Only
rid of
10
like.
seconds. Come
Oh
on.
damn it! Okay. The last time we timed somebody out, they never came back. Even though a lot of people got timed out in the chat, they like took a hissy fit. I was like, damn.
Mousy loves me.
Yeah,
She
she is.
knows
She's
I
back.
love her.
Mhm.
Yeah. Some people know how to take a joke.
All right, I'm gonna read. All right, I'm gonna read these pretty quick. Let's see. Hey, okay, you ready, guys?
Mm.
Justice for Mousy. Like, don't just the like seriously. The mods like they don't like the caps. Then slowly yet teasingly, as if he were giving a child a great mysterious treat, he took out a bunch of keys from the interior hidey hole in his jacket. Key after key, a key, he said, for every lock in the house. Keys of all kinds, huge, ancient things of black iron, others slender, delicate, almost baroque, wafer thin yell keys for safes and boxes. And during his absence, it was I who must take care of them all. I eyed the heavy bunch with circumspection. Until that moment, I had not given a single thought to the practical aspects of marriage with a great house, great wealth, a great man, whose key ring was as crowded as that of a prisoner warden. Here were the clumsy and archaic keys for the dungeons. For dungeons we had in plenty, although they had been converted to cellars for his wines. The dusty bottles inhabited in racks of all those deep holes of pain in the rock on which the castle was built. These are the keys to the kitchen. This is the key to the picture gallery, a treasure house filled with by 5 centuries of avid collectors. He foresaw I would spend hours there. He had amply indulged his taste for the symbolists, he told me with a glint of greed. There was Moreau's great portrait of his first wife, the same sacrificial victim, with the imprint of the lace like chains on her pellucid skin. Did I know the story of the painting of that picture? How, when she took off her clothes for him for the first time, she, fresh from her bar in Montmartre, she had robed herself involuntarily in a blush that reddened her breasts, her shoulders, her arms, her whole body. He had thought of that story of that dear girl when first he had undressed me. Ensor, the great Ensor, his monolithic canvas, the foolish virgins, 2 or 3 late Gorgons, his special favorite, the one on the trance brown girl in the deserted house which was called Out of the Night We Come, Into the Night We Go. And besides the additions he had made himself, his marvelous inheritance of Wathas, parsons, and a pair of very special Broganauts, commissioned for a licentious ancestor who, it was said, had posed for the master's brush himself and his own 2 daughters. He broke off his catalogue of treasures abruptly. Your thin white face, cherie, he said, as if he saw it for the first time. Your thin white face with its promise of debauchery only a connoisseur could detect. A log fell in the fire, instigating a shower of sparks. The opal on my finger spurted green flame. I felt as giddy as if I were on the edge of a precipice. I was afraid, not so much of him, or his monstrous presence, heavy as if he had been gifted at birth with more specific gravity than the rest of us. The presence that, even when I thought myself most in love with him, always subtly oppressed me. No, I was not afraid of him, but of myself. I seemed reborn in his unreflective eyes, reborn in unfamiliar shapes. I hardly recognized myself from his descriptions of me, and yet, might there not be a grain of beastly truth in it? And in the red firelight, I blushed again, unnoticed, to think he might have chosen me because, in my innocence, he sensed a rare talent for corruption. Here is the key to the china cabinet. Don't laugh, my darling. There's a king's ransom in Serves in that closet, and a queen's ransom in Limoges, and a key to the locked, barred room where 5 generations of plate were kept. Keys, keys, keys. He would trust me with the keys to his office, although I was only a baby, and the keys to his safes, where he kept the jewels I would wear, he promised me, when he returned to Paris. Such jewels. Why, I would be able to change my earrings and necklaces 3 times a day, just as the Empress Josephine used to change her underwear. He doubted, he said, with that hollow knocking sound that served him for a chuckle. I would be quite so interested in his share certificates, although they, of course, were worth infinitely more. Outside our firelit privacy, I could hear the sound of the tide drawing back from the pebbles of the foreshore. It was nearly time for him to leave me. One single key remained unaccounted for on the ring, and he hesitated over it. For a moment, I thought he was going to unfasten it from its brothers, slip it back into his pocket, and take it away with him. What is that key? I demanded, for his chaffing had made me bold. The key to your heart? Give it to me. He dangled the key tantalizingly above my head, out of reach of my straining fingers. Those bare red lips of his cracked sidelong in a smile. Ah, no, he said, not the key to my heart, rather the key to my enfer. He left it on the ring, fastened the ring together, shook it musically like a carillon, then threw the keys in a jingling heap in my lap. I could feel the cold metal chilling my thighs through my thin muslin frock. He bent over me to drop a beard-masked kiss on my forehead. Every man must have one secret, even if only one from his wife, he said. Promise me this, my wave-faced piano player. Promise me you'll use all the keys on the ring except that last little one I showed you. Play with anything you find, jewels, silver plate. Make toy boats of my share certificates if it pleases you, and send them sailing off to America after me. All is yours. Everywhere is open to you, except the lock that this single key fits. Yet all it is the key to a little room at the foot of the West Tower, behind the still room at the end of a dark little corridor full of horrid cobwebs that would get into your hair and frighten you if you ventured there. Oh, and you'd find it such a dull little room. But you must promise me, if you love me, to leave it well alone. It is only a private study, a hideaway, a den, as the English say, where I can go sometimes on those infrequent yet inevitable occasions when the yoke of marriage seems to weigh too heavily on my shoulders. There I can go, you understand, to savor the rare pleasure of imagining myself wifeless. There was a little thin starlet in the courtyard as, wrapped in my furs, I saw him to his car. His last words were that he had telephoned the mainland and taken a piano tuner on to the staff. This man would arrive to take up his duties the next day. He pressed me to his vicuna breast once and then drove away. I had drowsed away that afternoon, and now I could not sleep. I lay tossing and turning in his ancestral bed until another daybreak discolored the dozen mirrors that were iridescent with reflections of the sea. The perfume of the lilies weighed on my senses. When I thought that, henceforth, I would always share these sheets with a man whose skin, as theirs did, contained the toad-like clammy hint of moisture. I felt a vague desolation that within me, now my female wound had healed, there had awoken a certain queasy craving, like the cravings of pregnant women for the taste of coal or chalk or tainted food, for the renewal of his caresses. Had he not hinted to me, in his flesh as in his speech and looks, of the thousand baroque intersections of flesh upon flesh? I lay in our wide bed, accompanied by a sleepless companion, my dark newborn curiosity. I lay in bed alone, and I longed for him, and it disgusted me. Were there jewels enough in all his safes to recompense me for this predicament? Did all that castle hold enough riches to recompense me for the company of the libertine with whom I must share it? In what precisely was the nature of my desirous dread for this mysterious being who, to show his mastery over me, had abandoned me on my wedding night? Then I sat straight up in bed, under the sardonic masks and the gargoyles carved about me, riven by a wild sunrise. Might he have left me, not for Wall Street, but for an importunate mistress, tucked away God knows where, who knew how to pleasure him far better than a girl whose fingers had been exercised hitherto only by the practice of scales and arpeggios? And slowly, soothed, I sank back on the heaping pillows. I acknowledged that the jealous scare I just given myself was not unmixed with a little tincture of relief. At last I drifted into slumber, as daylight filled the room and chased bad dreams away. But the last thing I remembered before I slept was the tall jar of lilies beside the bed, how the thick glass distorted their fat stems so they looked like arms, dismembered arms, drifting, drowned in greenish water. Coffee and croissants to console this bridal solitary waking. Delicious. Honey, too, in a section of comb on a glass saucer. The maid squeezed the aromatic juice from an orange into a chilled goblet while I watched her, as I lay in the lazy midday bed of the rich. Yet nothing this morning gave me more than a fleeting pleasure, except to hear that the piano tuner had been at work already. When the maid told me that, I sprang out of bed and pulled on my old serge skirt and flannel blouse, costume of a student, in which I felt far more at ease with myself than in any of my new fine clothes. After my 3 hours of practice, I called the piano tuner in to thank him. He was blind, of course, but young, with a gentle mouth, and gray eyes that fixed upon me although they could not see me. He was a blacksmith's son from the village across the causeway, a chorister in the church, whom the good priest had taught a trade so that he could make a living. Almost satisfactory. Yes, he thought he would be happy here. And if he added shyly, he might sometimes be allowed to hear me play. For, you see, he loved music. Yes, of course, I said. Certainly. He seemed to know that I had smiled. After I dismissed him, even though I'd woken so late, it was still barely time for my 5 o'clock. The housekeeper, who, thoughtfully forewarned by my husband, had restrained herself from interrupting my music, now made me a solemn visitation with a lengthy menu for a late luncheon. When I told her I did not need it, she looked at me obliquely, along her nose. I understand at once that one of my principal functions as chatelaine was to provide work for the staff, but all the same, I asserted myself and said I would wait until dinner time, although I looked forward nervously to the solitary meal. Then I found I had to tell her what I would like to have prepared for me. My imagination, still that of a schoolgirl, ran riot. A fowl in cream? Or should I anticipate Christmas with the varnished turkey? No, I have decided. Avocado and shrimp. Lots of it, followed by no entree at all. But surprise me for dessert, with every ice cream in the icebox. She noted all down but sniffed. I'd shocked her. Such tastes, child that I was. I giggled when she left me. Oh, good. Oh, okay.
Nice one.
Oh,
Hey, got there.
oh,
Got there.
oh. Hi, C. Mrs. C is back.
Hey, I
Hey.
wasn't sure if I was allowed back. Sorry.
No, I just didn't see you, and I guess
No,
Rekkr
I
didn't
just
see
came
you
back.
either.
No, I just
Yeah.
came back. Like I was like, I hope that they're just talking and I can come back because
Oh, of
he's
course.
calmed down and on his game now. And then after that, husband woke up, so I had to take care of what his
That
because he needed something to eat, and then now I'm back.
that's not a problem. Rekkr did some of the embarrassing parts in the
I
beginning when
tried
they
to.
had.
I
Well,
have to go
An
back and
attempt
do it.
was made.
no, you did great. Are you kidding? But I was blushing for you because it was a little risque. Like some of it is a bit.
Because I
It's a bit
say to see
old.
you next Tuesday.
Oh, me, and I didn't say it.
Oh, okay.
In honor of you, I didn't say it because I knew
What
we
did
weren't.
you say?
Yeah.
The garden?
I, no, I didn't. I don't think I said anything. Actually, I can't even remember.
Privates. You
I,
said
Private.
oh,
private.
I
You
said
said for
privates.
another reason.
Yes, her privates. Yes, because it says something about her. See you next Tuesday being like a fig, and I said nope, her privates. That's it. That's right. I said privates. Yeah. Well, we're just about at Mipet's part, and then there's the end. So
Yeah,
this is
we're
taking a
right
lot.
at my part.
Yeah, this is
It
taking
is
a lot longer. But I'm gonna leave it up to the chat. But I'm ready to continue. Like we should finish it. What do you guys think? We're halfway
we
through
can't leave
already.
them hanging.
Let's keep
Oh,
going.
Yeah.
Alrighty,
Hmm.
here we
All
go.
right. Whenever you're ready, Mipet.
But now, what shall I do now? I could have spent a happy hour unpacking the trunks that contained my trousseau, but the maid had done that already. The dresses, the tailor-mades hung in the wardrobe in my dressing room, the hats on wooden heads to keep their shape, the shoes on wooden feet as if all these inanimate objects were imitating the appearance of life to mock me. I did not like to linger in my overcrowded dressing room, nor in my lugubriously lily-scented bedroom. How shall I pass the time? I shall take a bath in my own bathroom, and found the taps were little dolphins made of gold, with chips of turquoise for eyes. And there was a tank of goldfish who swam in and out of moving fronds of weeds, as bored, I thought, as I was. How I wished he had not left me. How I wished it was possible to chat with, say, a maid or the piano tuner. But I knew already my new rank forbade overtures of friendship to the staff. I'd been hoping to defer the call as long as I could, so that I should have something to look forward to in the dead waste of time I foresaw before me after my dinner was done with. But at 7:15, when the darkness already surrounded the castle, I could contain myself no longer. I telephoned my mother and astonished myself by bursting into tears when I heard her voice. No, nothing was the matter, Mother. I have gold bath taps. I said, gold bath taps. No, I suppose that's nothing to cry about, Mother. The line was bad. I could hardly make out her congratulations, her questions, her concern, but I was a little comforted when I put the receiver down. Yet there still remained 1 whole hour to dinner, and the whole unimaginable desert of the rest of the evening. The bunch of keys lay where he had left them, on the rug before the library fire, which had warmed the metal so they had no longer felt cold to the touch, but warm, almost as my own skin. How careless I was. A maid tending to the logs eyed me reproachfully, as if I'd set a trap for her as I picked up the clinking bundle of keys. The keys to the interior doors of this lovely prison, of which I was both the inmate and the mistress, and had scarcely seen. When I remembered that, I felt the exhilaration of the explorer. Lights, more lights. At the touch of a switch, the dreaming library was brilliantly illuminated. I ran crazily about the castle, switching on every light I could find. I ordered the servants to light up all their quarters too, so the castle would shine like a sea-born birthday cake lit with 1,000 candles, one for every year of its life, and everybody on shore would wonder at it. When everything was lit as brightly as the cafe in the Gare du Nord, the significance of the possessions implied that by the bunch of keys no longer intimidated me, for I was determined now to search through them all for evidence of my husband's true nature. His office first, evidently. A mahogany desk 1/2 mile wide with an impeccable blotter and a bank of telephones. I allowed myself the luxury of opening the safe that contained the jewellery and delved sufficiently among the leather boxes to find out how my marriage had given me access to a gin's treasury, parures, bracelets, rings. While I was thus surrounded by diamonds, a maid knocked on the door and entered before I spoke. A subtle discourtesy. I would speak to my husband about that. She eyed my serge skirt superciliously. Did Madam plan to dress for dinner? She made a moue of disdain. When I laughed to hear that, she was far more a lady than I. But imagine to dress up in one of my poire extravaganzas, with the jewelled turban and aigrette on my head, roped with pearls to the navel. Sorry, I just lost my to sit down all alone in the baronial dining hall at the head of that massive board at which King Mark was reputed to have fed his knights. I grew calmer under the cold eye of her disapproval. I adopted the crisp inflections of an officer's daughter. No, I would not dress for dinner. Furthermore, I was not hungry enough for dinner itself. She must tell the housekeeper to cancel the dormitory feast I'd ordered. Could they leave me sandwiches and a flask of coffee in my music room? And would they all dismiss for the night? Mais oui, madame. Oh, crap. I knew by her bereft intonation I had let them down again, but I did not care. I was armed against them by the brilliance of his hoard, but I would not find his heart amongst the glittering stones. As soon as she gone, I began a systematic search of the drawers of his desk. It was all in order, so I found nothing, not a random doodle on an old envelope, nor the faded photograph of a woman. Only the files of business correspondence, the bills from the home farms, the invoices from tailors, the billets doux from international financiers, nothing. And this absence of the evidence of his real life began to impress me strangely. There must, I thought, be a great deal to conceal if he takes such pains to hide it. His office was a singularly impersonal room, facing inwards onto the courtyard, as though he wanted to turn his back on the siren sea in order to keep a clear head while he bankrupted a small businessman in Amsterdam, or, I noticed with a thrill of distaste, engaged in some business in Laos that must, from a certain cryptic references in his amateur botanist enthusiasm for rare poppies, to be to do with opium. Was he not rich enough to do without crime? Or was the crime itself his profit? And yet I saw enough to appreciate his zeal for secrecy. Now I had ransacked his desk, I must spend a cool-headed quarter of an hour putting every last letter back where I had found it, and, as I covered the traces of my visit, by some chance as I reached inside a little drawer that had stuck fast, I must have touched a hidden spring, for a secret drawer flew open within that drawer itself, and this secret drawer contained, at last, a file marked personal. I was alone but for my reflection in the uncurtained window. I had the brief notion that his heart, pressed flat as a flower, crimson and thin as tissue paper, lay in this file. It was a very thin one. I could have wished, perhaps, I had not found that touching, ill-spelt note on a paper napkin marked La Capole that began, "My darling, I cannot wait for the moment when you may make me yours completely." The diva had sent him a page of the score Tristan with Liebstod with the single cryptic word "until" scrawled across it. But the strangest of all these love letters was a postcard with a view of a village graveyard among mountains, where some black-coated ghoul enthusiastically dug a grave. This little scene, executed with the lurid exuberance of Grand Guignol, was captioned, "Typical Transylvanian scene, midnight, All Hallows." And on the other side, the message, "On the occasion of this marriage to the descendant of Dracula, always remember the supreme and unique pleasure of love is the certainty that one is doing evil. Tout semites see." A joke in the worst possible taste. For had he not been married to a Romanian countess? And then I remembered her pretty, witty face, and her name, Carmilla. My most recent predecessor in this castle had been, it would seem, the most sophisticated. I put away the file sobered. Nothing in my life of family love and music had prepared me for these grown-up games, and yet these were clues to his self that showed me, at least, how much he had been loved, even if they did not reveal any good reason for it. But I wanted to know still more, and as I closed the office door and locked it, the means to discover more fell in my way. I fell indeed, and with the clatter of a dropped canteen of cutlery, for, as I turned the slick yellow lock, I contrived somehow to open up the keyring itself, so that all the keys tumbled loose on the floor. And the very first key I picked out of that pile was, as luck or ill fortune had it, the key to the room he had forbidden me. the room he would keep for his own, so that he could go there when he wished to feel himself once more a bachelor. I made my decision to explore it before I felt the resurgence of my ill-defined fear of his waxen stillness. Perhaps I'd half imagined then that I might find his real self in his den, waiting there to see if indeed I had obeyed him, that he'd sent a moving figure of himself to New York, the enigmatic, self-sustaining carapace of his public person, while the real man, whose face I had glimpsed in the storm of orgasm, occupied himself with the pressing private business in the study at the foot of the West Tower, beside the still room. Yet, if that was so, it was imperative that I should find him, should know him, and I was too deluded by his apparent taste for me to think that my disobedience might truly offend him. I took the forbidden key from the heap and left the others lying there. It was now very late, and the castle was adrift as far as it could go from the land in the middle of the silent ocean, where, at my orders, it floated like a garland of light, and all silent, all still, but for the murmuring of the waves. I felt no fear, no intimidation of dread. Now I walked as firmly as I had done in my mother's house. Not a narrow, dusty little passage at all. Why had he lied to me? But an ill-lit one, certainly. The electricity, for some reason, did not extend here, so I retreated to the still room and found a bundle of wax tapers in a cupboard, stored there with matches to light the oak board at grand dinners. I put a match to my little taper and advanced with it in my hand, like a penitent, along the corridor hung with heavy, I think, Venetian tapestries. The flame picked out here, the head of a man there, the rich breast of a woman spilling through a rent in her dress. The rape of the Sabines, perhaps. The naked swords and the immolated horses suggested some grisly mythological subject. The corridor wound downwards. There was an almost imperceptible ramp to the thickly carpeted floor. The heavy hangings on the wall muffled my footsteps, even my breathing. For some reason, it grew very warm. The sweat sprang out in beads on my brow. I could no longer hear the sound of the sea. A long, winding corridor, as if I were in the viceroy of the castle. And this corridor led to a door of the worm-eaten oak, low, round-topped, barred with black iron. And still I felt no fear, no rising of hairs on the back of the neck, no prickling of the thumbs. The key slid into the new lock as easy as a knife into butter. No fear, but a hesitation, a holding of the spiritual breath. If I had found some traces of his heart in a file marked personal, perhaps here, in this subterranean privacy, I might find a little of his soul. It was the consciousness of the possibility of such a discovery, of its possible strangeness, that kept me for a moment motionless, before, in the foolhardiness of my already subtly tainted innocence, I turned the key and the door creaked slowly back. There is a striking resemblance between the act of love and the ministrations of a torturer, opined my husband's favourite poet. I had learned something of the nature of that similarity on my marriage bed, and now my taper showed me the outlines of Rekkr. There was also a great wheel, like the ones I had seen in the woodcuts of the martyrdoms of the saints, in my old nurse's little store of holy books, and just one glimpse of it before my little flame caved in and I was left in absolute darkness. A metal figure hinged at the side, which I knew to be spiked on the inside and to have the name, the Iron Maiden.
Yay.
Absolute darkness, and about me the instruments of mutilation. Wow.
Do you need a break? Wow.
I just
Oh my.
just
I
need to
knew it.
wet my whistle. Hang on.
Damn, that's a torture room. That
I
sounds
could
like.
have.
Awesome.
I would have said that.
You know what?
I thought it would have been
Ready
one.
If
with
I
that
had a
choker.
basin, sounds like my basin.
And
If I had
purposely,
one.
Rekkr, we had Rekkr not read any of this, so he could actually like gasp in awe up here as we read. What did you? Let me just ask you: did you actually think that it would be that? Like everybody in the chat was saying he's a vampire, like definitely.
100% I knew it was a torture room.
Oh,
Yep.
you did? No
Yeah.
vampire? You thought it was torture?
I
Why?
knew it absolutely was a torture room.
No, I mean before she described it, like during the other parts of the read, you thought he was that kind of guy, huh? Oh, you mean because of the art, because of his collections?
Um, I'm not 100% sure exactly what sort of tipped it off, but something just said that room it's either a sex dungeon or a straight up dungeon.
Well, same thing. like, yeah, I guess Oh, thank you, Malking. Malking says it's such a good story, and actually, he was the one that they suggested Angela Carter when we found this. So thank you for that, because this is fun. For me, I knew there was trouble when she described the choker, like that it was created because they had survived the guillotine, like
Mm.
as a joke. And I'm thinking of, like, she says it's like a big red gash, like I'm like, oh God, why would you describe it like that? There's going to be something like really, like,
You're very
yeah, something bad.
okay.
You ready? You need more time?
I'm ready. No,
Okay.
I'm good.
Carry on, mistress.
Until that moment, this spoiled child did not know she had inherited nerves and a will from the mother who had defied the yellow outlaws of Indochina. My mother's spirit drove me on into that dreadful place, in a cold ecstasy to know the very worst. I fumbled for the matches in my pocket. What a dim, lugubrious light they gave, and yet enough, oh, more than enough, to see a room designed for desecration and some dark night of unimaginable lovers whose embraces were annihilation. The walls of this stark torture chamber were the naked rock. They gleamed as if they were sweating with fright. At the four corners of the room were funerary urns of great antiquity, Etruscan perhaps, and on three-legged ebony stands, the bowls of incense he had left burning, which filled the room with a sacerdotal reek. Wheel, rack, and Iron Maiden were, I saw, displayed as grandly as if they were items of statuary, and I was almost consoled. Then, and almost persuaded myself that I might have stumbled only upon a little museum of his perversity, that he had installed these monstrous items here only for contemplation. Yet, as the centre of the room lay in a cafal and doomed, ominous bier of Renaissance workmanship, surrounded by long white candles, and at its foot an armful of the same lilies with which he had filled my bedroom, stowed in a 4-foot-high jar glazed with a sombre Chinese red. I scarcely dared examine this whatever, and its occupant more closely. Yet I knew I must. Each time I struck a match to light those candles around her bed, it seemed a garment of that innocence of mine for which he had lusted fell away from me. The opera singer lay, quite naked, under a thin sheet of very rare and precious linen, which, as the Princess of Italy used to shroud those whom they had poisoned. I touched her, very gently, on the white breast. She was cool. He had embalmed her. On her throat I could see the blue imprint of her strangler's fingers. The cool, sad flame of the candles flickered on her white, closed eyelids. The worst thing was the dead lips smiled. Beyond the catafalque, in the middle of the shadows, a white nacreous glimmer. As my eyes accustomed themselves to the gathering darkness, I, at last, oh, horrors! Made out of a skull. Yes, a skull, so utterly denuded now of flesh that it scarcely seemed possible. The stark bone had once richly upholstered with life, and this skull was strung up by a system of unseen cords, so that it appeared to hang, disembodied in the still, heavy air, and it had been crowned with a wreath of white roses and a veil of lace, the final image of his bride. Yet the skull was still so beautiful, had shaped with its sheer planes so imperiously the face that had once existed above it, that I recognised her the moment I saw her face of the evening star walking on the rim of night. One false step. Oh, my poor dear girl, next in the fated sisterhood of his wives. One false step and into the abyss of the dark you stumbled. And where was she? The latest dead? The Romanian countess who might have thought her blood would have survived his depredations? I knew she must be here, in the place that had wound me through the castle towards it on a spool of inexorability. But at first I could see no signs of her. Then, for some reason, perhaps some change of atmosphere wrought by my presence, the metal shell of the Iron Maiden emitted a ghostly twang. My feverish imagination might have guessed its occupant was trying to clamber out, though even in the midst of my raising hysteria, I knew she must be dead to find a home here. With trembling fingers, I prized open the front of the upright coffin, with its sculpted face caught into a richness of pain. Then, overcome, I dropped the key I still held in my other hand. I dropped it into the forming pool of her blood. She was pierced, not by one, but by 100 spikes. This child of the land of the vampires seemed so newly dead, so full of blood. Oh God, how recently had he become a widower? How long had he kept her in this obscene cell? Had it been all the time he had courted me in the clear light of Paris? I closed the lid of her coffin very gently and burst into a tumult of sobbing that contained both pity for his other victims and also a dreadful anguish to know that I, too, was one of them. The candles flared as if in a draught from a door to elsewhere. The light caught the fire opal on my hand so that it flashed once with a baleful light, as if to tell me the eye of God, his eye, was upon me. My first thought, when I saw the ring for which I had sold myself to his fate, was how to escape it. I retained sufficient presence of mind. Oh, God, I've just lost my spot. Hang on a sec. I retained sufficient presence of mind to snuff out the candles round the bier with my fingers, to gather up my taper, to look around, although shuddering to ensure I had left behind no traces of my visit. I retrieved the key from the pool of blood, wrapped it in my handkerchief to keep my hands clean, and fled the room, slamming the door behind me. It crashed to with a juddering reverberation like the door of a hell. I could not take my refuge in my bedroom, for that retained the memory of his presence trapped in the fathomless silvering of his mirrors. My music room seemed the safest place, although I looked at the picture of Saint Cecilia with a faint dread. What had been the nature of her martyrdom? My mind was in a tumult. Schemes for flight jostled with one another. As soon as the tide receded from the causeway, crap, sorry. I would make up for the mainland on foot, running, stumbling. I did not trust the leather-clad chauffeur nor the well-behaved housekeeper, and I dared not take any of the pale ghostly maid into my confidence either, since they were his creatures all. Once at the village, I would fling myself directly on the mercy of the the gendarmerie. But I couldn't trust them either. His forefathers had ruled this coast for 8 centuries from this castle, whose moat was the Atlantic. Might not the police, the advocates, even the judge all be in his service, turning a common blind eye to this vice, since he was my lord whose word must be obeyed? Who on this distant coast would believe the white-faced girl from Paris who came running to them with a shuddering tale of blood, of fear, of the ogre murmuring in the shadows? Or rather, they would immediately know it to be true, but were all honour bound to let me carry it no further. Assistance? My mother? I ran to the telephone, and the line, of course, was dead as his wives. A thick darkness, led by any star, still glazed the windows. Every lamp in my room burned to keep the dark outside. Yet it seemed still to encroach on me, to be present beside me, but as if masked by my lights. The night, like a permeable substance that could seep into my skin. I looked at the precious little clock made from hypocritically innocent flowers long ago in Dresden, the hands that scarcely moved one single hour forward from when I first descended to that private slaughterhouse of his. Time was his servant too. It would trap me here in a night that would last until he came back to me, like a black sun on a hopeless morning. And yet the time might still be my friend at that hour, that very hour he set sail for New York. To know that in a few moments my husband would have left France calmed my agitation a little. My reason told me I had nothing to fear. The tide that would take him away to the new world would let me out of the imprisonment of the castle. Surely I could easily evade the servants. Anybody can buy a ticket at a railway station. Yet I was still rilled with unease. I opened the lid of the piano. Perhaps I thought my own particular magic might help me now that I could create a pentacle out of music that would keep me from harm. For if my music had first ensnared him, then might it also not give me the power to free myself from him? Mechanically, I began to play, but my fingers were stiff and shaking. At first, I could imagine nothing better than the exercises of Cerny, but still, the act of playing soothed me, and for solace, for the sake of the harmonious rationality of its sublime mathematics, I searched among his scores until I found the well-tempered clavier. I set myself and the therapeutic task of playing all Bach's equations, every one, and I told myself, if I played them all through without a single mistake, then the morning would find me once more a virgin. Crash of a dropped stick. His silver-headed cane. What else? Sly, cunning. He had returned. He was waiting for me outside the door. I rose to my feet. Fear gave me strength. I flung back my head defiantly. Come in. My voice astonished me by its firmness in its clarity. The door slowly, nervously opened, and I saw not the massive, irredeemable bulk of my husband, but the slight, stooping figure of the piano tuner, and he looked far more terrified of me than my mother's daughter would have been of the devil himself. In the torture chamber, it seemed to me that I would never laugh again. Now, helplessly, laugh I did, with relief, and, after a moment's hesitation, the boy's face softened and he smiled a little, almost in shame. Though they were blind, his eyes were singularly sweet. Forgive me, said Jean-Yves. I know I've given you grounds for dismissing me, that I should be crouching outside your door at midnight. But I heard you walking about up and down. I sleep in a room at the foot of the West Tower, and some intuition told me you could not sleep and might perhaps pass the insomniac hours at your piano, and I could not resist that. Besides, I stumbled over these. And he displayed the ring of keys I dropped outside my husband's office door, the ring from which one key was missing. I took them from him and looked around for a place to stow them, fixed on the piano stool as if to hide them would protect me. Still he stood smiling at me. How hard it was to make everyday conversation. It's perfect, I said. The piano, perfectly in tune. But he was full of loquacity, of embarrassment, as though I would only forgive him for his impudence, as if he explained the cause of it thoroughly. When I heard you play this afternoon, I thought I'd never heard such touch, such technique, a treat for me to hear a virtuoso. So I crept up to your door now, humbly as a little dog might, madame, and put my ear to the keyhole and listened, until my stick fell to the floor through a momentary clumsiness of mine, and I was discovered. He had the most touchingly ingenious smile. Perfectly in tune, I repeated. To my surprise now, I had said it. I found I could not say anything else. I could only repeat, in tune, perfect, in tune, over and over again. I saw a dawning surprise in his face. My head throbbed. To see him in his lovely blinding humanity seemed to hurt me very piercingly, somewhat inside my breast. His figure blurred, the room swayed about me. After the dreadful revelation of the bloody chamber, it was his tender look that made me faint. When I recovered consciousness, I found I was lying in the piano tuner's arms, and he was tucking the satin cushion from the piano stool under my head. You are in some great distress, he said. No bride should suffer so much so early in her marriage. His speech had the rhythms of the countryside, the rhythm of the tides. Any bride brought to this castle should come ready dressed in mourning, should bring a priest and a coffin with her, I said. What's this? It was too late to keep silent, and if he too were one of my husband's creatures, then at least he had been kind to me. So I told him everything, the keys, the interdiction, my disobedience, the room, the rack, the skull, the corpses, the blood. I can scarcely believe it, he said, wondering. That man, so rich, so well born? Here's proof, I said, and tumbled the fatal key out of my handkerchief onto the silken rug. Oh God, he said, I can smell the blood. He took my hand. He pressed his arms about me. Although he was scarcely more than a boy, I felt a great strength flow into me from his touch. We whisper all manner of strange tales up and down the coast, he said. There was a marquis once who used to hunt young girls in the mainland. He hunted them with dogs as though they were foxes. My grandfather had it from his grandfather how the marquis pulled a head out of his saddlebag and showed it to the blacksmith while the man was shoeing his horse. A fine specimen of the genus brunette, Gloom? And it was the head of the blacksmith's wife. But in these more democratic times, my husband must travel as far as Paris to do his hunting in the salons. Jeanise knew the moment I shuddered. Oh, madame, I thought all these old wives' tales, chattering of fools, spooks to scare bad children into good behaviour. Yet how could you know, a stranger, that the old name for this place is the Castle of Murder? How could I know indeed? Except that in my heart I'd always known its lord would be the death of me. Hark, said my friend suddenly. The sea changed key. It must be near morning. The tide is going down. He helped me up. I looked from the window towards the mainland, along the causeway where the stones gleamed wetly in the thin light of the end of the night, and, with an almost unimaginable horror, a horror the intensity of which I cannot transmit to you, I saw in the distance, still far away yet drawing moment by moment, inexorably nearer, the twin headlamps of his great black car, gouging tunnels through the shifting mist. My husband had indeed returned this time. It was no fancy. Well, there you go.
Wait. We're not done yet.
No, we're not. That's the pause part.
And
Yeah. No, that's
poor
the pause
Mipet got
part.
to take a water break.
Yes, take a water break because you went well past the page. Like you're into it. Yeah, I can tell.
I
Cass,
went well
how?
past.
Yes, you went well past, but that's fine because like we're well in. We're getting towards the end. How you feeling, Cass? Do you want to read or no? It's
Oh
up to
yeah,
you.
good.
Okay.
What would I read?
We're starting on. It would be looks like page 20. Where it says after she said my husband had indeed returned his time. It was no fancy. So we're
Yeah,
getting it
that's
was
right.
the
Because I've been following along.
right. So and just read as long as you want. When you decide to pause, then I'll take over. Okay. I just want to give you your shot since you had to bow out and you
Yeah,
took your pause.
sorry. Yeah.
And believe it or not, everybody, Mrs. Cassandra loves to read out loud. There you go. It's a secret
Oh,
nobody knew.
do we just keep going? No?
Yep. Just go as long as you want. Yep. Yep.
The
If
key.
everybody's ready,
Oh,
you good?
sorry.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Chat seems good.
Right. The key said, is it John? Or Jean? Yes, or
Jean,
Jean?
it's like Jean Eve or John. You could it
Yeah.
American. It would be John
I
Eve.
just made it up.
It's
Yeah,
Jean.
Okay, I'll go
Yeah,
with what you said.
it's
It
Jean
go
Eve.
must
with
go.
whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
It must go back on the ring with the others, as though nothing had happened. But the key was still caked with wet blood, and I ran to my bathroom and held it under the hot tab. Crimson water swirled down the basin, but as if the key itself were hurt, the bloody token stuck. The turquoise eyes of the dolphin taps derisively. I'm gonna just do what Move does, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They
Yeah,
they knew. Oh, sorry, gotta move positions for a second.
that's okay.
They knew my husband had been too clever for me. I scrubbed the stain with my nail brush, but still it would not budge. I thought how the car would be rolling silently towards the closed courtyard gate. The more I scrubbed the key, the more vivid grew the stain. The bell in the gatehouse would jangle. The porter's drowsy son would push back the patchwork quilt. Yawning, pulled the shirt over his head, thrust his feet into his sabots. Slowly, open the door for your master as slowly as you can. And still the bloodstain mocked the fresh water that spilled from the mouth of the leering dolphin. You have no more time, said Jean Years. Yves. He is here. I know it. I must stay with you. You shall not, I said. Go back to your room now, please. He hesitated. I put an edge of steel in my voice, for I knew I must meet my lord alone. Leave me. As soon as he had gone, I dealt with the keys and went to my bedroom. The causeway was empty. Jean Yves was correct. My husband had already entered the castle. I pulled the curtains close, stripped off my clothes, and pulled the bed curtains around me as a pungent aroma of Russian leather assured me my husband was once again beside me. Dearest, with the most treacherous, lavish tenderness, he kissed my eyes and mimicked the new bride newly wakened. I slung my arms around him, for on my seemingly quiescence deepened my salvation. De Silva of Rio outwitted me, he said wryly. My New York agent telephoned Le Javier and saved me a wasted journey. So we may resume our interrupted pleasures, my love. I did not believe one word of it. I knew I had behaved exactly according to his desires. Had he not bought me so that I should do so? I had been tricked into my own betrayal to that illimitable darkness, whose source I had been compelled to seek in his absence. And now that I had met that shadowed reality of his, oh, sorry, I lost the spot.
It's I had met that shadowed reality of his that came to life.
Okay, thank you. That came to life only in the presence of its own atrocities. I must pay the price of my new knowledge, the secret of Pandora's box. But he had given me the box himself, knowing I must learn the secret. I had played a game in which every move was governed by by a destiny as oppressive and opponent as himself, since that destiny was himself, and I had lost at that charade of innocence and vice in which he had engaged me, lost as the victim loses to the executioner.
Mm.
His hand brushed my breast beneath the sheet. I strained my nerves, yet could not help but flinch from the intimate touch, for it made me think of the piercing embrace of the Iron Maiden and of his lost lovers in the vault. When he saw my reluctance, his eyes veiled over, and yet his appetite did not diminish. His tongue ran over red lips already wet, silent, mysterious. He moved away from me to draw off his jacket. He took the gold watch from his waistcoat and laid it on the dressing table like a good burkise, scooped out his rating loose change, and now, oh God, makes a great play of patting his pockets. Officiously, puzzled lips pierce, searching for something that had been mislaid, then turns to me with a ghastly triumph smile. But of course, I gave the keys to you. Your keys? Why, of course. Here, they're under the pillow. Wait a moment. What? Ah, no, now where can I have left them? I was whiling away the evening without you at the piano, I remember. Oh, of course, the music room. Brusquely, he flung my negligee of antique lace on the bed. Go and get them. Now? This moment? Can't it wait until the morning? My darling. I forced myself to be seductive. I saw myself pale, pliant as a plant that begs to be trampled underfoot. A dozen vulnerable, appealing girls reflecting in as many mirrors, and I saw how he almost failed to resist me. If he had come to me in bed, I would have strangled him then. But he half snarled, "No, it won't wait now." The unearthly light of dawn filled the room. Had only one previous dawn broken upon me in that vile place, and there was nothing for it but to go and fetch the keys from the music stool and pray he would not examine them too closely. Pray to God his eyes would fail him, that he might be struck blind. When I came back into the bedroom carrying the bunch of keys that jangled at every stop like a curious musical instrument, he was sitting on the bed in his immaculate shirt sleeves, his head sunk in his hands, and it seemed to me he was in despair. Strange. In spite of my fear of him, that made me whiter than my wrap. I felt there emanated from him at that moment a stench of absolute despair, rank and ghastly, as if the lilies that surrounded him had all at once became a fester, or the Russian leather of his scent were reverting to the elements of flayed hide, and the excitement of which it was composed, the chthonic gravity. His presence exerted a tremendous pressure on the room so that the blood pounded in my ears as if we had been precipitated to the bottom of the sea beneath the waves that pounded against the shore.
You stop there for a moment,
Yeah,
Kat. We're getting
yeah.
a lot of reverb back. I'm getting
Oh, sorry.
messages. No, it's not. There's nothing I don't think you can do about it. I tried behind the scenes to
Yeah,
fix it, but something's coming through and making you a bit staticky. So although that was excellent, like I hope you enjoyed that
yeah.
part. I'm gonna try to read here and see if I can
Yep.
keep playing around with it a little bit, but they're not able to understand some of the words. So I'm sorry.
Okay.
Okay.
No, no problem.
All right. So, okay, guys, are you guys ready in the chat? Like, I don't know. I'm afraid to find out what happens now. Uh, like, I held my life in my hands amongst those keys, and in a moment would place it between his well manicured fingers. The evidence of that bloody chamber had showed me I could expect no mercy. Yet when he raised his head and stared at me with his blind, shuttered eyes, as though he did not recognize me, I felt a terrified pity for him, for this man who lived in such a strange, secret places that, if I loved him enough to follow him, I should have to die. The atrocious loneliness of that monster. The monocle had fallen from his face. His curling mane was disordered, as if he had run his hands through it in his distraction. I saw how he had lost his impassivity and was now filled with suppressed excitement. The hand he stretched out for those counters in his game of love and death shook a little. The face that turned towards me contained a somber delirium that seemed to be compounded of a ghastly yet shame, but also of a terrible, guilty joy, as he slowly ascertained how I had sinned. The telltale stain had resolved itself into a mark, the shape and brilliance of the heart on a playing card. He disengaged the key from the ring and looked at it for a while, solitary, brooding. It is the key that leads to the kingdom of the unimaginable, he said. His voice was low and had in it the timbre of certain great cathedral organs that seem, when they are played, to be conversing with God. I could not restrain a sob. "Oh, my little love, who brought me a white gift of music," he said almost as if grieving. "My little love, you'll never know how much I hate daylight." Then he sharply ordered, "Kneel." I knelt before him, and he pressed the key lightly to my forehead, held it there for a moment. I felt a faint tingling of the skin, and when I involuntarily glanced at myself in the mirror, I saw the heart-shaped stain had transferred itself to my forehead, to the space between the eyebrows, like the cast mark of a Brahmin woman, or the mark of Cain. And now the key gleamed as freshly as if it had just been cut. He clipped it back on the ring, emitting that same heavy sigh as he'd done when I had said that I would marry him. My virgin over Pregios, prepare yourself for martyrdom. What form shall it take? I said. Decapitation, he whispered, almost voluptuously. Go and bathe yourself. Put on that white dress you wore to hear Tristan, and the necklace that prefigures your inn. And I shall take myself off to the armory, my dear, to sharpen my great grandfather's ceremonial sword. I need to take a breath. Oh my God. You guys think he could have chopped her head off? Holy
No,
crap. Oh my God.
And the
there's no
fact
way
that
this
he's
isn't
telling
gonna
her
happen.
before, yeah, I was going to say, telling her that that's what I'm having, what I'm doing to you. Oh, well,
Yeah.
yeah, no, I'm not going to be scared of that. Woo.
The blind man's gotta come and save her. Even though
I
he's
know.
blind, he's gotta come and save her somehow.
Oh, you're hoping that the blind piano tuner like comes to the
Yes,
rescue?
yes, he's gotta be our
You would
hero.
hope.
Save the
Yeah,
maiden.
let's hope somebody. I'll tell you because the whole time she's like, I know he wants me to be bad. Like he's setting me up to be bad. He like curiosity kills the cat kind of thing. But
Yep.
until she went in that room, she had no idea how much he had set her up. Like really set her. Like, hey, this is
Well,
not
you
good.
can't give someone a key. Like, you cannot go in there. That is my place. And
Yeah,
then
And then
expect
give her the
them
key.
not to
Yeah.
go. Yeah, give
yeah.
them the key and
Mm.
expect them not to go in there. Like, come on.
True, true. How
I,
many of us have been
I would
put in
do
that
it.
have been put in that scenario where there's something very private in your curiosity, but like
Well, the
you
thing
gotta
is,
decide.
even even if you hadn't gone in there, would he believe that you hadn't gone in there? Even,
Hmm.
do you know what I mean? He left the
No,
key. He left the key with you. So,
yeah.
you know,
So
he expects
basically,
you to use it
hmm
whether you do or not. He's not going to have proof that you didn't use it.
so you're saying she's gonna die no matter what? She either goes to
Yep.
see why she's
Exactly.
dying, that he's a
Yep.
monster, or she's gonna die just because she didn't prove he was a monster, because he's a
Well, he's going,
monster.
yeah, yeah, he's going to kill her either way. I mean, she's only just going, oh, okay, well, now I know how it's going to happen.
It's like a new interpretation of the Marquise de Sade, right? Like all that like danger and sex, and then everybody dies anyway. Like he tortures them to death. Like yeah, it's
You
like a modern day
finally
retelling.
lose.
Yeah,
To think you finally lose your virginity just to die the next day.
and the sad part, Mrs. C, because I was thinking this like when you were going to read the part, I was like, Mrs. C is going to be so disappointed she lost her virginity, and she doesn't even know if she enjoyed it or not. She's like,
Yeah,
well, like, okay, what was that? It was like, Mrs.
it
C's
seemed
gonna
like
say, Claire, there's not enough here. Like, they just said they did it. Nobody said anything. Like,
I honestly think it sounds like he's older, so I think he's a minute man. So she
you think he's
probably
a
didn't
minute?
get over the pain before he was done.
Oh, true, true. But he seems to be kind of tender and he does kind of spoil her, like all the
Yeah.
flowers, the chocolates. He took her out of a life of poverty because of something about her, not her beauty, not her virtue, but the piano playing, the music. Like she has a gift that he wanted to entertain him with. He liked
It
it.
seems like they
Hmm.
all do, though. You got the opera singer, and then, well, you got
Oh,
the
yeah.
rich countess, but it
Mm-hmm.
seems like they
The
have something he wants.
And it was the Countess, right, that wrote the naughty letters, like the like I
Yes,
can't. Yes, like
Yeah.
I think it was her.
Mm-hmm. Yes, that would have intrigued him, like playing on the daring side of it. Yeah, they all died. Okay, are you guys ready? Let's bring this to an end and set you all
Let's
Would
free.
you
give it
like
the
me to
Yeah.
read?
climax.
You
Would
want
you
to
like me to?
read
I'll
some
do a
more?
few pages. Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's see. It starts with the serving, and then let's stop it.
Or just
Yeah, give me a break and
just just tell me to
stop.
shut up.
No, stop when the telephone rings. Okay. Yeah,
Okay. Sounds
yeah,
good. All right.
yeah.
So what did we just do? Sharpen ceremony sort. The
Yeah, it's.
servants.
Mm-hmm.
We shall have absolute privacy for our last rites. I've already dismissed them. If you look out the window, you can see them going to the mainland. It was now the full, pale light of morning. The weather was grey, indeterminate. The sea had an oily, sinister look, a gloomy day on which to die. Along the causeway, I could see trooping every maid and scullion, every potboy, the pan-scourer, valet, laundress and vassal who worked in that great house, most on foot, a few on bicycles. The faceless housekeeper trudged along with the great basket in which, I guessed, she'd stowed as much as she could ransack from the larder. The Marquis must have given the chauffeur leave to borrow the motor for the day, for it went last of all at a stately pace, as though the procession were a cortege and the car already bore my coffin to the mainland for burial. But I knew no good Breton earth would cover me. Like a last faithful lover, I had another fate. I've given them all a day's holiday to celebrate our wedding, he said, and smiled. However hard I stared at the receding company, I could see no sign of Jean Ives, our latest servant, hired by the preceding morning. Go, now, bathe yourself, dress yourself. The lustry ritual and the ceremonial robing, after that, the sacrifice. Wait in the music room until I telephone for you. No, my dear. And he smiled as I started recalling the line was dead. One may call inside the castle just as much as one pleases, but outside, never. I scrubbed my forehead with the nail brush as I scrubbed the key, but his red mark would not go away either, no matter what I did, and I knew I should wear it until I died, though that would not be long. Then I went to my dressing room and put on that white muslin shift, a costume of a victim of an auto da fe he had bought me to listen to in the Liebstad Inn. 12 young women combed out 12 listless sheaves of brown hair in the mirrors. Soon there would be none. The massive lilies that surrounded me exhaled now the odour of their withering. They looked like the trumpets of the angels of death. Can I just be a pain in the ass? Rekkr, can you please mute?
Oh, it's the
I can
Sorry.
it's the pages. Yeah, sorry.
Pages turning.
Thank you.
On the dressing table, coiled like a snake about to strike, lay the ruby choker.
Oh.
Already almost lifeless, cold at heart, I descended the spiral staircase to the music room, but there I found I had not been abandoned. I can be of some comfort to you, the boy said, though not much use. We pushed the piano stool in front of the open window so that for as long as I could, I would be able to smell the ancient, reconciling smell of the sea that in time will cleanse everything, scour the old bones white, wash away all the stains. The last little chambermaid had trotted along the causeway long ago, and now the tide, fated as I, came tumbling in, the crisp wavelets splashing on the old stones. You do not deserve this, he said. Who can say what I deserve or know, I said. I've done nothing, but that may be sufficient reason for condemning me. You disobeyed him, he said. That is sufficient reason for him to punish you. I only did what he knew I would. Like Eve, he said. The telephone rang, a shrill imperative, let it ring. But my lover lifted me up and set me on my feet. I knew I must answer it. The receiver felt heavy as earth. Is that where you wanted me to do up to?
Yeah. This is good. Okay. Oh boy.
So,
This is
like,
can you imagine sitting there looking? Yeah, I think that's the name of one of the others.
That's why I was wondering, like, which one was it? And I wonder if he tried to help them before too.
Well, he just hired him. Remember, she showed up and played the
That was the
piano.
day before.
It was
Yeah.
horribly out of
Then
tune, so
how
he
did
hired
he
her.
know?
Because he went into the room with her, remember? He heard her and she didn't go into the room. She told him what was in the room. And he knows all the stories of all of the
Oh, yeah,
marriages.
yeah. Okay. I was like, how
Remember,
did he know?
the whole town gossips about this guy because like the wife before, which was really just recent, died 3 months after they were married, boating accident with no body, somehow. Hmm. Maybe,
Well,
but
she at least got
apparently
3 months. I mean, this bird
well,
doesn't seem to be
apparently
that.
she didn't go in the room. Yeah, she didn't go into the room. So, and if it was the countess, right, the last one. So he was probably having some fun. She sounded a little bit risque and tantalizing. Like she liked to play this seductive game. So he might have been amusing himself. Who knows? I bet you it was a big game of cat and mouse.
Yep.
I
50
bet you he
Shades
never.
of Grey.
I
50
bet you
Shades of Grey.
something like that, or he always showed her the key but never gave her the key, like this one. Like he always like knew it was there, but he would take it off the ring or hide it, like thinking
Yeah.
while she was watching or something, teasing her. I'll bet you he played. Yeah. Well, all right, so the phone rang. She answered it, right? And here we go. You guys ready? The courtyard. Immediately my lover kissed me and he took my hand. He would come with me if I would lead him. Courage. When I thought of courage, I thought of my mother. Then I saw a muscle in my lover's face quiver. Hoofbeats, he said. I cast one last desperate glance from the window, and like a miracle, I saw a horse and rider galloping at the vertiginous speed along the causeway, though the waves crashed now, high as the horse's fetlocks. A rider, her black skirts tucked up around her waist so she could ride hard and fast, a crazy, magnificent horsewoman in widow's weeds. As the telephone rang again. Am I to wait all morning? Every moment my mother drew nearer. She will be too late, Jean-Yves said, and yet he could not restrain a note of hope that, though it must be so, yet it must not be so. The third intransient call. Shall I come up to heaven to fetch you down, Saint Cecilia? You wicked woman, do you wish me to compound my crimes by desecrating the marriage bed? So I must go to the courtyard, where my husband waited in his London tailored trousers and the shirt from Turnbull and Asser, besides the mounting block, which, in his hand, the sword which his great grandfather had presented to the little corporal in the token of surrender to the Republic before he shot himself. The heavy sword, unsheathed, grey as that November morning, sharp as childbirth, mortal. When my husband saw my companion, he observed, let the blind lead the blind, eh? But does even a youth as besotted as you think she was truly blind to her own desires when she took my ring? Give it back, whore. The fires in the opal had all died down. I gladly slipped it from my finger, and even in that dolorous place, my heart was lighter for the lack of it. My husband took it lovingly and lodged it on the tip of his little finger. It would go no further. It will serve me for a dozen more fiancés, he said. To the block, woman. No, leave the boy. I shall deal with him later, utilizing a less exalted instrument than the one for which I do my wife the honor of her immolation. For do not fear that in death you will be divided. Slowly, slowly, one foot before the other, I crossed the cobbles. The longer I dawdled over my execution, the more time it gave the avenging angel to descend. Don't loiter, girl. Do you think I shall lose appetite for the meal if you are so long about serving it? No, I shall grow hungrier, more ravenous with each moment, more cruel. Run to me, run. I have a place prepared for your exquisite corpse in my display of flesh. He raised the sword and cut bright segments from the air with it, but still I lingered, although my hopes, so recently raised, now began to flag. If she is not here by now, her horse must have stumbled on the causeway, have plunged into the sea. One thing only made me glad, that my lover would not see me die. My husband laid my branded forehead on the stone, and as he had done once before, twisted my hair into a rope and drew it away from my neck. Such a pretty neck, he said, with what seemed to be a genuine retrospective tenderness, a neck like the stem of a young plant. I felt the silken bristle of his beard and the wet touch of his lips as he kissed my nape. And once again, of my apparel I must retain only my gems. The sharp blade ripped my dress in two, and it fell from me. A little green moss growing in the crevices of the mounting block would be the last thing I should see in all the world. The whiz of that heavy sword. And a great battering and pounding at the gate, the jangling of the bell, the frenzied neighing of a horse, the unholy silence of the place shattered in an instant. The blade did not descend. The necklace did not sever. My head did not roll. For an instant, the beast wavered in his stroke, a sufficient split second of astonished indecision to let me spring upright and dart to the assistance of my lover as she struggled sightlessly with the great bolts that kept her out. The Marquis stood transfixed, utterly dazed at a loss. It must have been as if he had been watching his beloved Tristan for the 12th or 13th time. And Tristan stirred, then leapt from his bear in the last act, announced in a jaunty aria intersposed from Verdi by the bygones and bygones, crying over spilt milk, did nobody any good. And as for himself, he proposed to live happily ever after. The puppet master, open-mouthed, wide-eyed, impotent at the last, saw his dolls break free of their strings, abandon the rituals he had ordained for them since time began, and start to live for themselves. The king, aghast, witnesses the revolt of his pawns. You never saw such a wild thing as my mother. Her hat seized by the winds and blown out to the sea, so that her hair was her white mane, her black lissom legs exposed to the thigh, her skirts tucked around her waist, one hand on the reins of the rearing horse, while the other clasped my father's service revolver, and behind her the breakers of the savage, indifferent sea, like the witnesses of a furious justice. And my husband stood stock still, as if she had been Medusa, the sword still raised over his head, as in those clockwork tabloids of Bluebeard that you see in the glass cases at fairs. And then it was as though a curious child pushed his centime into the slot and set all in motion. The heavy, bearded figure roared out loud, braying with fury and wielding the honorable sword as if it were a matter of death or glory, charged at all three. On her 18th birthday, my mother had disposed of a man-eating tiger that had ravaged the villages in the hills north of Hanoi. Now, without a moment's hesitation, she raised my father's gun, took aim, and put a single, irreproachable bullet through my husband's head.
Go, mama.
Oh
Now
boy.
that's a mum you can rely on.
Yep. That
Wait,
is what a mama
wow.
bear is.
Damn, I didn't see that. Like,
That was a twist.
that is. We've got two more paragraphs left, but like that was like I think it should have stopped right there. But she does go on a little bit, a little bit. That anyway. Let me just finish up and then we can talk. We gotta talk at least a minute about this. This was good. We led a quiet life, the three of us. I inherited, of course, enormous wealth, but we have given most of it away to various charities. The castle is now a school for the blind, though I pray that the children who live there are not haunted by any sad ghosts crying for the husband who will never return to the bloody chamber. the contents of which are buried or burned, the doors sealed. I felt I had a right to retain sufficient funds to start a little music school here, on the outskirts of Paris, and we do well enough. Sometimes we can even afford to go to the opera, though never to sit in a box, of course. We know we are the source of many whisperings and much gossip, but the three of us know the truth of it, and mere chatter can never harm us. I can only bless the, what shall I call it? The maternal telepathy that sent my mother running headlong from the telephone to the station after I had called her that night. I never heard you cry before, she said, by way of explanation. Not when you were happy. And who ever cried about gold bath taps? The night train, the one I had taken, she lay in her berth, sleepless as I had been. When she could not find a taxi at that lonely halt, she borrowed old Dalbin from a bemused farmer, for some internal urgency told her that she must reach me before the incoming tide sealed me away from her forever. My poor old nurse, left scandalized at home. What? Interrupt my lord on his honeymoon? She died soon after. She had taken so much secret pleasure in the fact that her little girl had become a marquis, and now here I was, scarcely a penny the richer, widowed at 17, in the most dubious circumstances, and busily engaged in setting up house with a piano tuner. Poor thing, she passed away in a sorry state of disillusion, but I do believe my mother loves him as much as I do. No paint nor powder, no matter how thick or white, can mask that red mark on my forehead. I am glad he cannot see it, not for fear of his revulsion, since I know he sees me clearly with his heart, but because it spares my shame. The end. What shame?
Oh,
Curiosity? Like, is that her
yeah.
shame? Yeah.
My goodness. Good 2.5 hours it took to read.
I know, my goodness, but yeah, and I'm
That was,
thinking,
It's a good story though.
it
no,
is a
It's a
great
very good
story.
story.
yeah,
I love
thank
the
you.
twists and turns.
I did like the twistiness of it. It was perfect. It's what I usually look for a read, and I do want to apologize to my panel and everybody who stayed in chat. I really misjudged the time. Usually, that many pages I top out at 40 minutes. I doubled it, thinking splitting it up, but
But
no.
we couldn't leave them hanging. There's
No,
just
we
no
couldn't.
way.
I'm glad it's all one piece. I wouldn't even know where to end it, but it was a good story. And I'm gonna drop the link again for everybody who wants to read more about Angela Carter because she has got some great twisty
Yeah,
shorts.
there's another one just isn't there another one just below
Yeah,
it?
yeah. There's a whole bunch. But there's a trilogy that she does about called the Wolf trilogy that I'm
Yeah, I've
looking
seen
for.
that
Yeah,
Mocking
that
was saying that's good.
yeah,
That's a good one.
yeah. I love finding new authors, so thank you very much for indulging us, Mocking, and for everybody who stayed in chat. This was something different. Um, I'm sure we'll have to think of something half the size for the next one, if everybody's willing.
Liam's over here getting mad because of the blood doesn't stain like that.
and
So,
and I promise that if there's any French words in it, I will research how they're
oh
pronounced
no, are you
I
kidding?
beforehand.
would do
No,
the same
Okay.
thing with it.
listen, listen. When it comes to good storytelling, people don't look for perfection. They don't care about that. I don't think. Like, I think
It's
I
the
thank you
imagery it
all for
puts in your
indulging.
head. Yeah, it's the
Exactly.
image it
Yeah.
puts in your head. So,
Yeah. So on that note,
this
I
is
would just
fun
like
though.
to I would like everybody who watches this, either on YouTube later or those of you in the chat, I want to know if the imagery did hit you. If reading out loud in a live, like a premiere, albeit a smaller one, because this was very long. Like,
Well, we did
beside
take breaks
this,
here and there too.
yeah, we did, because it's necessary. Yeah, it is necessary. But, I mean, what do you guys think of premiering live reads of short stories? Like, I don't
I
know.
like it. I think it
I
Yeah.
should.
like
You
it.
should do it.
Oh, yeah, but yeah,
But you're
you're,
gonna have to read too though, Rekkr.
Maybe I should start practicing reading more instead of writing.
I have to say thank you. You're quite the champion for taking on a few pages cold like that, because I know that's not easy for anyone. Even for Mrs. Cassandra to come in at the end and go over pages she wasn't ready for. It's hard. It is.
I
Like,
had even a giggle. I had a laugh or a giggle for when she giggles. I was gonna like.
oh no. Oh, yeah. I wanted you to do. Yeah, for those of you, you know she was supposed to do the honeymoon pages. You know that's what I gave her, right? Like you know it. You just know it.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Well,
But sorry, I had to jump off. I'm glad I was able to come back.
Hey, that just shows you we're all ready for in real life at any time. We're a team and community. And I have to say, I am so honored to have you guys up here with me and you guys in chat that will actually even venture to do anything like this. um, because I get these odd notions, and I know I'm a bit of a weirdo, but like I do love the classics. I love a good twisty story. And that is definitely a twisty tale. Like, and obviously Craven, not Dracula, and because a bullet in his head would not have killed me. But
when you were going about when it was going about her mom had back when she was just turned 18 killed a man-eating tiger. I was thinking it was gonna say she killed like maybe like his grandfather or something before like caught him doing something.
Oh,
I was like, wait, she already. But then I was like, well, why would she let her daughter go there if she knew? But then it said a man-eating tiger. I was like, oh, never mind.
It's true too, because all weaved in the story is also just a tale of humanity. Here there was her mother was such a strong woman, right? She did all that at the age of 17 or 18 before she, right? And then she married for her heart, and then the guy goes off to war and dies, and now she's a widow. So here, it doesn't matter how strong you are. Right. It doesn't matter how strong you are or how blessed your life is. Tragedy and misfortune can interweave at any time. Because look at this, count. Like he's rich as rich can be. And he does the only pleasure he gets in life is taking the head off of his wives. Like,
well, shit.
Yeah.
It's because they all disobeyed him.
So they should have listened.
Gee whiz.
Oh, I feel so sorry for the modern man who doesn't get to behead their wives when they.
I know, right?
I know.
Oh my god! I thought no one would agree with me.
Oh my goodness.
Oh man, I do appreciate you, but you're showing your ugly ass because that was totally fucking. But I don't
Wait, what?
Claire.
No.
Yeah.
Don't be going on adventures now, Claire.
Yes, here we go. No, that was pretty funny. Like, no, seriously. Yeah. Somebody somewhere on YouTube or Twitter is going to think you meant that. Yeah.
For legal reasons, this is a complete joke. I will.
Marky's like, where's my sandwich? Off with your head. What? You put the mustard on the wrong side of the ham. I don't like it next to the cheese. What is wrong with you, woman? To the dungeon. To the dungeon with you.
I have the dungeon in the basement.
Yes, but
need him to be there.
But on the opposite eye, don't we all dream of like somebody swooping in and just like Mrs. Cassandra, come on, like old little girls' fantasies, right? And some guy just
and it was the mom, and they made it even better.
But here's this guy: flowers, chocolates, jewels, your whole wardrobe, a castle.
Yep.
Like it's supposed to be
a
fairy tale.
Pretty woman, right? It'd be like Pretty Woman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. But at least that ending was good. That ended with the humanity that people are people, and the heart wants what the heart wants. It doesn't matter your station in life.
I'm glad that her and the blind guy got together because it seemed like she was kind of liking him, like his smile, and he can tune her pianos for free now.
Yes,
she can tune more than that for free.
Let's hope so. Anyway, but I do find the girl to be a bit it's just a matter of circumstance for her. I don't know if her heart is there. She does say she
You
loves him,
see
but
mocking in there saying that the towels aren't straight. Oh my goodness.
the bathtub.
They're crooked.
I can't do both. Nobody can do both at the same time. Make your sandwich and clean the bathroom. Like, chill, chill. Mm. I said he was a sadist during the
What?
train scene. Yes, you did. He called him out as a sadist, like the Marquis de Sade, like a sadist right from the start in the train. Yes, he did. When they were describing his lips, I was thinking the same thing, Liam, because
Mm.
I when I read Marquis de Sade in some of the other classics, that's how it's always explained. The
I
slight
was
curling
like,
of his lips always gave him away.
there's parts of me where I was like, Donna, is that you?
Mm-hmm. What?
Talking about her flesh and stuff. Like, when he was about to kill her.
I I did like the imagery of the lilies though. I did because
Those poor
Yeah.
lilies,
lilies. What did
yes.
lilies do?
Well, because lilies always represent, like here in America, lilies are prominent at funerals. Like it's not such
The
a
white,
flattering thing. Yeah.
yeah, those particular lilies, the white lilies with the
Hmm.
yellow stamen
The one
and
that
the
stains, it really does stain. You can't go anywhere near it. It gets on your clothes. It
yeah,
ruins everything. Yeah.
the
Well,
yellow from the stamen. It's yeah,
mm. They
they're
also
really
use
common
them.
over here. They're everywhere. They're like a
They use
weed over here.
they
And a
use
lot of
them.
the book, like a lot of the novels I read, like the Korean novels, that they always talk about lilies.
Yeah, and it has so much reference through literature in and through all kinds of things it does. And here also in religious connotations too. Here they use it a lot at Easter time for the rising in everything. So yeah, it's like, or mother's instinct. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you don't
Wait,
play with the mothers. You don't play with the mothers instinct. She
so
heard
the
her
mother
she heard her
basically,
baby cry. Go
yep,
ahead, read it.
despite the nurse's warnings. Exactly, she did, because the nurse, as it explained in the beginning, was just being like, she was happy she was marrying him, but she was just being like, opals are bad luck. Like she was like the naysayer, even though she was secretly thrilled she was getting married. She was like, "Are you sure? Like his other three wives are dead. You want to think about
There's
this?
a
Like,
reason.
yeah, like that's an opal." And
They all
and that
died young.
and how about that catty line? Did he take the opal off their dead hands? Like, did he get it back from his dead wives if he gave it, like they keep passing it down? And like he said, he was going to give it to a million more. A million
Didn't she
more.
say that? I thought she also said that about the dress too, didn't she?
I
The
don't,
dress
did
that
she?
the wedding dress. Because
Or the
didn't
way.
wasn't she wearing the dress that he made her wear something like a
Well, the wedding
her,
dress, yeah. Well, there
wasn't
was
it
a
passed
tulle
down?
dress that she wore. It
Oh,
was the one that she wore to the opera, and it was
oh,
like
okay.
Muslim, and it was a little sexy because like it was a little revealing, which is in French. He's French, so like with fashion and everything, it can be like anything goes. But she had no idea before the marriage. Yes, she did. Yes, she did. Like, what kind of rich guy shows up at a piano player's house and just starts like throwing money at you? And when she says, she refers to herself as bought because she came from a widow's house. She had no dowry. She had nothing. And so he was actually, going to support her mother and everything too. Like she was bought
Yeah,
into marriage by him.
that's the thing that
Yeah.
sucks about that time. Like,
Mm.
women were pretty much just the only thing you could do is marry good, like,
And he
and
did
hopefully
ask.
marry a nice man.
Yeah, he didn't make a barter with their mother. He actually asked her because she had to consent, and she did give. The girl. She literally. And what was her name? I know they got the picture of Saint Cecile, but I don't believe we ever found out her name.
I thought her name
Anyway,
was Cecilia, wasn't it? Or is that
is
what
is
they?
that why he bought her the painting of Saint Cecile? Because
I think so.
yeah. So Cecile actually did agree to marry him. Like they had a courtship. So at least there was that. But he set her up. He totally set her up. Yeah. Well, look, he's sorry now. He did.
They should have put him with his. They should have burned him with the other ones so they could haunt him.
I will tell you, this story gave me so much imagery while I was reading it that I definitely have to put it on YouTube with images. I'm definitely going to have to do that. Like, I could just picture the way that castle is right near the ocean with the waves and all like
Yep.
that, and it's so
Oh
desolate.
man, the way I was picturing like the
And
mom on the horse coming, like
exactly, the mom on the horse with her hair whipping and the waves crashing behind her, like trying to knock her off the causeway.
And yeah,
her
Like,
the
skirt
big
yeah.
long
her skirt
causeway.
up to
Yep.
her thighs.
or even or even when she's looking out the window at the end and the piano tuner's there and she knows she's going to die and she's just looking out to the ocean. These are her last moments of freedom, enjoying the day, looking out a big window, laying like sitting on a bench in front of the window just looking out. Like that struck me, like the position she'd be in and the look on her face. It just had to be like doom, right? Like, you just know it's gonna happen. Like, just when. He already told her head was coming off. Then
And
he
she
goes
didn't
and tell.
know where she could go.
Then he has the nerve to say, "Go get pretty for it." Like, go take and put on your best clothes so I can take your head off with my grandfather's sword. I'm just like, oh yeah, they would not go in Bear's world. That would never happen.
Like, yeah, go bathe, go get yourself clean. While I'm gonna get you all
Yeah.
bloody.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yes. You know what? I just it actually gave me a flashback that someone asked me to get all dressed up for a special dinner just so they could break up with me once. Like,
Jesus
Who
Christ.
does that? What kind of?
no,
Oh,
no, there's a story before it because I had complained. We didn't have a lot of time. I was really busy all the time. And it was a wonderful guy, like entertaining, handsome, a lot of things going for him. I enjoyed my time with him. I really did. But I complained that we never went out anywhere. We always like sat home in the living room and had dinner at home. I was always cooking. And I just said, like, the week before, we never go out. Like, could you make a little effort and let's have a date? Like, make a date for me. So he did. And he asked me to get all dressed up and everything, right? And then he broke up with me, and he said it was like, he goes, because obviously you'd rather have the candlelight and the chocolate than my conversation, and that really stuck with me for the rest of my life.
so
Like that.
are you saying you deserved it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I think he could have had that conversation at home when I said, like, why don't we go out? And he could have said, because I really enjoy talking. I enjoy the casualness. We can be ourselves. I don't like pomp and circumstance. I would have appreciated that, and I would have understood it. And I would have said, fine, compromise. Let's order in. I don't feel like cooking. And I'm sure he would have been fine with it. But I think other people in his life had given the preconceived notion that all women are like this because he judged me on one comment. That's what I think in a way. Because I'm not like that. Everybody knows I'm a put your feet up, enjoy the moment kind of person. And so I made one comment and he judged me forever for it. So I'm kind of glad that we broke up because I don't think I could live under that kind of judgment very long, you know, without like deadly repercussions. you know, you know. But I just
For
thought
legal
that
reasons, that was a joke.
yeah. Thank you, Rekkr. But no, honestly though, he really went through a lot of effort to break up with me. So I'm sure that he really had a sore spot about this. Like this was a longer baggage than me. Like one comment couldn't have done that. You know what I mean? Like I think I really disappointed him with that comment. It's just like he put me in a box with all the other failures, like immediately. I was like, oh damn. Well, better early on, right? Than better early on than when it gets messy.
Yeah. Don't want anyone ending up in a suitcase. I mean, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Yeah.
Well,
this
it's probably
is
time for us
interesting.
to get out of here, isn't it?
Yep, one more comment and then we're out of here. Oh, they're out of here. The key is almost the key to her selfhood. Seeing her possible fate makes her realize that she has bought into a life of objectification and subjugation that will ultimately kill her. Absolutely. Oh, God.
Absolutely.
Wow. Get out of my head. How dare you steal my words, my thoughts, that everything. damn you, mocking. Damn. But that's brilliant because that's exactly what I was thinking. If you really get into it, that key does represent her selling herself out to this
Mhm.
situation. Like immediate, absolutely. Or it's
Like,
just a key. Exactly, Maki. But yes, it does make you think, right? Like that's what I love about short stories. So I was just going to say again, everybody go check out Angela Carter. Read this one yourselves all the way through. The imagery is great. Yes, there are some parts of the story, as there are with all short stories, because authors in general are under pressure on a short story to pack a lot in there, and
yep.
some of the details don't really make sense. Like when the phone was ringing, they make it sound like, that was actually the instigation for some things, but it wasn't. Like Liam's right. It kind of leaves you hanging. And then, making it a French marquis in a castle to make you think, is kind of obvious. But then again, they wanted that imagery there. What better imagery when you think of a French marquis, than aloof and all that money and just mysteriousness and darkness. There's all these stories about them. So, like, you don't have a lot of page room to get that in. So you do use, like, what they call tropes, automatic things that pop into your head. But it was great.
Oh, it sounds like it's raining
Yep.
outside. Nice.
Wait. Yes, Mocking says, Mocking, shut up. He says, we broke up over this story. I remember. Shut up.
But yeah, I better. I gotta get
Rumor
the.
mill. Oh my God, that's gonna hit the streets. Mocking. I'm not dealing with it. I'm not dealing with
Yep.
it. Like, okay, I'm not dealing with it.
I better get the child to
Yes,
bed soon.
yep. It's almost 3 hours. Thank you all for your
Yeah.
patience. I
Thank you for
thank you.
letting me back up.
Mrs. Cassandra, thank you so much. Mipet, thank you. You
Yep.
guys are great.
No
Rekkr,
worries.
thank you for
It
making
was a
sure we
pleasure.
behaved and kept me out of
Yeah.
legal
Thank you
quagmire.
for having me, and it was really fun.
Mm,
We gotta do this
See you
again.
in what, tomorrow or next day? Something
It
like
will
that.
be Sunday.
Sunday.
Well,
Yes, yes. Last
would it be
statement.
tomorrow for you
Everybody
though,
who,
Mipet?
Oh, cool. Monday. Okay.
yeah, no, it's
No,
Sunday at 1 o'clock in the
Sunday
afternoon.
at Yeah,
Yeah,
so ridiculous o'clock for me. That's okay.
yeah. Record has to get up 6 o'clock in the morning. Like
yup.
anybody who still hasn't contacted me about coming up or providing a video or a link or a statement, please do so. I'm finishing up the schedule. Everybody's welcome to come up for a few minutes. We may not be able to stay the whole time, but definitely I want to hear from everybody because I really want this to be about everybody and not me. Like, everybody whose channels I support, who's out there doing great stuff. Y'all know. And I look
Yep.
forward to seeing you
Oh,
guys. Yeah. Well, you
speaking of, I
come.
actually put something new out, so you can
Oh,
check
there you
that
Oh, I
out.
go.
didn't
With
get a
thanks to
notification.
Claire,
I am
we finally got
saving
it.
that. I'm gonna play that on Sunday with your permission, by the way.
Absolutely,
I'm gonna go watch it
absolutely not a
now
problem.
since I didn't get
Mm-hmm.
notification.
No, I didn't even make the stream yet, boo. That's
No, I'm
why.
talking about the you
Oh,
haven't posted
Mippets.
it yet, Mipet? Did you post it
Oh, she
already?
did. It came out
Yeah,
Oh,
yesterday.
yeah,
It was up yesterday. Yeah.
oh really? Why didn't
Yeah.
YouTube notify me? I'm tired of YouTube doing
Cause YouTube,
I'm
are you
having
listening, YouTube? Cause you're an asshole. That's why. That's why.
that.
notification. I'm not getting notified for shit as well, and I'm jack shit with YouTube. They're assholes.
Yes, I am
But
looking forward to somebody to represent YouTube as when I do the next Am I the Asshole? Any volunteers? If somebody wants to?
Ouch.
I'd love to do. Am I the arsehole again? Remember, I won you $50 last time I was on.
All right, on that, I'm out. On that, I'm out.
Well,
I,
thank
I
you.
can't afford
Bye,
another
guys.
50 bucks.
Have a
Thank
good
you,
Oh,
weekend.
just
everybody.
one quick thing.
Thank you.
Yep.
Mocking, I shall be DMing you with you need to approve something for me, and I'm sure you'll get a good laugh out of it. So, yeah, just
Oh,
that's coming up.
more library limericks, huh? Like,
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
some more limericks coming, but I need approval, apparently, Claire said. So,
well, after the last
yeah.
one I read, you damn straight. Like, Jesus Christ. All right. That's it. We're out of here. Okay. Good night, everybody. Thank you for
Bye. Good
everybody in
night.
chat. Okay. Bye.
See you.
Good night.
Have a good one.